Let me know when we're streaming. All right, we're going to call this hearing to order. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Malcolm Ruff, District 41 delegate, chair of this subcommittee, and on behalf of Vice Chair Chang, we'd like to welcome you all to this third installation of capital budget subcommittee hearings. We have 5 hearings today and about 30 witnesses, public testimony on top of the testimony of our DLS analysts as well as agency representatives. So we will try to efficiently move through this budget process. So thank you all for your indulgence. We're going to start with our hearing on the judiciary, and we'll call on our budget analyst, Scott Benson, for the DLS analysis. Thank you very much, Mr. Benson. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. My name is Scott Benson, and today I will be presenting. There we go. Let's try that. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. My name is Scott Benson, and today I will be presenting the capital analysis for the judiciary. As you can see in the cover chart on page. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, just get right up on that.
Okay. As you can see in the cover chart on page 1, the judiciary's 5-year capital improvement program, or CIP, includes 4 projects: the new Supreme Court of Maryland building, the new Hartford County District Court, the Washington County District Court renovation and expansion, and the new Anne Arundel County District Court. The fiscal 2027 capital budget includes $20.3 million for the new Supreme Court of Maryland building, while the remaining projects are out-year projects and do not have funding in fiscal 2027. There's a key observation on page 2. The new Supreme Court of Maryland building faced an 8-month deferral to the start of construction due to the delay in the procurement of a construction services contract. Groundbreaking for this project officially occurred on February 26th. Turning to the summary of fiscal 2027 funded state-owned projects, you can see that the total expected cost of the new Supreme Court of Maryland building is $171.7 million in general obligation bonds. In December 2025, the Board of Public Works, or BPW, approved the $147 million low bid construction contract. The cost estimate provided in support of the 2025 session review of the project set the construction phase cost at $191 million, but the revised estimate based on the construction contract approved by BPW lowers this to $158 million. In addition to the $20.3 million included for fiscal 2027, the capital budget bill also pre-authorizes $52.7 million in general obligation bonds for fiscal 2028 and $26.3 million in fiscal 2029. With the project officially beginning construction, it is expected to take 36 months with substantial completion set for January 2029. The equipment funds provided for the new facility are for built-in equipment, while the remaining furniture and equipment needs are to be funded through the judiciary's operating budget and are expected to be $10.5 million in general funds. Turning to the summary of out-year state-owned projects beginning on page 4, the new Hartford County District Court project includes the construction of a new facility with on-site parking, access roads, and site improvements in Bel Air for the District Court for Hartford County. Currently, 3 parcels of land have been purchased for the project by the Department of General Services, or DGS. However, the 4th parcel of land for the project has not yet been purchased and has resulted in significant delays for the project. DGS has encountered issues negotiating with the landowner of the 4th parcel, as offers to purchase the property by the state have not been enough to compensate the owner for the revenue generated from the property. An updated appraisal was requested by DGS to provide an updated offer in September 2025. However, no updated offer was accepted, and the judiciary reported that the land was sold to another owner in late calendar 2025, requiring DGS to begin negotiations with a new party. As of June 2025, the design stage was scheduled to begin in fiscal 2028. However, this has been delayed to an undisclosed time in fiscal 2029, according to the fiscal 2027 CIP. The judiciary should discuss the current timeline for negotiations and the previous offers made to the landowners, as well as alternative project plans if the 4th parcel cannot be purchased. The next project, the Washington County District Court renovation and expansion, involves the renovation of the current courthouse in Hagerstown and the construction of additional spaces for a 3rd judge. On November 5th, 2025, BPW approved a construction contract for $11.5 million, lowering the total estimated construction cost to $12.2 million. The judiciary has reported that the project design is 80% completed, with this phase set to end in April 2026. The judiciary believes it is likely that the fiscal 2028 authorization will include an additional $2.5 million, in addition to the $739,000 pre-authorized in the fiscal 2027 capital budget bill, and the additional $100,000 expected for equipment. This is due to issues discovered with the current generators, and the replacement is expected to raise the project total to approximately $15.3 million. The judiciary should comment on the need to replace the current generators for the facility and the impact it will have on the project's timeline. And the final project is the new Anne Arundel County District Court, which is set to replace the existing facility in Glen Burnie. Although initially scheduled to request funds in fiscal 2027, DGS has decided to delay the project and to begin the site search in late calendar 2026, with the intention of purchasing the required properties in July 2027. Despite the agency's intention to have the project's land purchased by July 2027, the design stage is not set to begin until July 2030. As funding for the project's planning is not expected to be authorized until fiscal 2031. The fiscal 2027 CIP estimates the project's total cost to be $142.1 million in general obligation bonds, compared to the $119 million estimated in fiscal 2025. The judiciary should comment on the reasons for the project's delay and the increase in the estimated total cost of the project. The recommended action is on page 2, and the Department of Legislative Services recommends approving all general obligation bond authorizations, amendments to prior authorizations, as well as pre-authorizations. And that concludes my presentation. I can now take your questions.
Are there any questions from the subcommittee for our analysts? Seeing none, we will call on the Honorable Judge Matthew J. Fader, Chief Justice of our Supreme Court, for the agency response. You may go ahead and proceed, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the subcommittee. It's a pleasure to be here today. I am Matthew Fader, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Maryland, and at the table here with me is John Morrissey, Chief Judge of the District Court of Maryland. I will be very brief. We don't have any new asks, but I really just wanted to express my appreciation for this subcommittee's support in the past. We were able to have a groundbreaking for our new Supreme Court building last Thursday. It went very well, and we're very excited about the project. We should have it in 3 years, and it will be a much more fitting home for our state's 2 appellate courts and the important work that goes on there. So thank you very much for your support. Certainly happy to take questions about that, but I'll now turn it over to Chief Judge Morrissey, who will address the 3 district court projects.
Good afternoon, Chairman Ruff, Vice Chair Chang, members of the committee. For the record, my name's John Morrissey, and I'm the Chief Judge of the District Court of Maryland. As a first and perhaps only time, I'm not asking for any monies in fiscal 27, so I thought that would please you all, but I did want to take the opportunity to address Mr. Benson's questions that he had. As you all probably know, DGS, the Department of General Services, handles all the negotiations on behalf of the district court. The negotiations currently for that 4th parcel in the Harford County District Court are ongoing. Offers were originally submitted in 2024 and 2025. In the fall of 25, DGS updated the appraisals and evaluated the 4th parcel includes both a fee simple interest and a leasehold and a ground rent, so it makes it a little bit more difficult to value. So they have increased the appraisal value, but it's still within the original amount of money that you all had authorized for the original 4 parcels. As they prepare to update the 2025 offer, a change in the leasehold ownership caused a delay. They now plan to submit this month a new offer to the property, so hopefully that will go well. As to the second question, the alternative option would be to require if we weren't able to get the 4th parcel, a taller, more narrow, and unfortunately that would cause an increase in the cost to the courthouse because of the building codes, deeper foundations, that kind of thing. With respect to Washington County District Court renovation, we're looking forward to breaking ground next month on that. It's a 3rd courtroom that we're putting on, but at the same time, we're doing generators and HVAC equipment, which will greatly increase the lifespan of that building. So while we're getting a third courtroom, we're also taking care to make sure that that building's going to last for a considerably longer period of time, and we won't need to come back to you in the foreseeable future once that third courtroom is built. And then finally, the new Anne Arundel County District Court that would replace the current Glen Burnie Court. The design phase of this project can't begin until the land acquisition process is fully complete. And at the recommendation of the Department of General Services, the land acquisition funding has been increased to address the delays we've encountered. We've kind of put Anne Arundel behind the Washington County and Harford counties, so that accounts to kind of our priorities of how we're looking at it in the district court. As to the second question about the increase in total cost of the project, there was, when we started to do the part one, there was an additional 7,500 approximately square feet that would include modest increase for space to juvenile services and additional secured parking. Because the cost estimate worksheet is directly driven by the square footage, any adjustment to the building size results in a proportional change in the overall cost. I'm also informed that the Department of General Services applies an annual construction market escalation rate to account for inflation, and this escalation contributes to the year-over-year cost growth and is a standard component of state capital budgeting. I'd like to thank you all for the prior Baltimore City, the Mabel House Hubbard Courthouse. It's a beautiful facility. If any of you have not had a chance to take a look at it yet, I'd be happy to set up a tour for you. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, I neglected at the outset. I wanted to thank Mr. Benson for his thorough work on this and the judiciary's operating budget as well. I apologize for neglecting that, but we very much appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, judges. We really appreciate you guys. Questions from the subcommittee? Mr. Vice Chair.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good to see you both, Chief Judges. With regards to the Anne Arundel County District Court, is the project, has it identified an actual piece of land where the new district court will be located?
So there'll have to be an RFP put out for that, but we do have specifics that we're looking for in properties generally for the district court. It has to be on a major transportation route is probably one of the most important. Some of the sites that we've looked at do include light rail as well as bus lines. We also look at whether the property has pavement on it, so we don't have to deal with raw land. So in all likelihood, it would be either an existing facility or a facility that's vacant right now rather than a build on new land.
Great. Mr. Chairman, if I may have a couple more questions.
Oh, sure.
Will it continue to be in Glen Burnie?
It will be in Glen Burnie. It's the area is looking, we're kind of just moving in circles around Glen Burnie on the Route 2 corridor in that area.
Okay, great. And if I may, the last question is, are there any, I know it's early, are there any plans for the current district courthouse once a new one is built?
I have not discussed that. I know Mr. Miller from DGS, our senior project person, is here and might be better able to answer that question. Would you mind? Thank you.
Please come on up.
I'd like to give my compliments to Mr. Miller, too, for the design and the build at the Baltimore City and Catonsville courthouses.
And the new Supreme Court building as well.
Yes, sorry.
Sir? How are you? Sir?
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be here in front of you. My name is Barry Miller. I am a senior capital executive with DGS. My first client agency was these two wonderful colleagues, friends, mentors, which was the judiciary. In my 27 years with DGS, I've now picked up 7 additional agencies, including some of my friends behind me, which is our Maryland Military Department, all of the veterans, state police. So, at any rate, the Hubbard District Court, which was just referenced, was my 11th. Judge Fader's new Supreme Court is my first, and Judge Morrissey's next 3 will be my 12th, 13th, and 14th district courts. Now, to get back to the question at hand, would you please restate it? I was trying to give just a general introduction.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Miller, for your introduction. With regards to the current district court, this may be early, but are there any plans for the current district courthouse once a new one is built?
No, not as yet. And I would also submit that with the Bel Air, when we do get that developed, we at the Risteau District Court, which is in downtown Bel Air, we would be presented with a similar decision to make. Sometimes those various facilities are turned over to the county for possible reuse.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Thank you, Chief Judges. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Are there any other questions from the subcommittee? I wanted to ask Judge Morrissey or Mr. Miller around the Harford County District Court, a little bit around strategy. If the appraised value of the parcel increased but remained within budget, why were prior offers unsuccessful, and were those offers below the updated appraisal numbers?
That acquisition, again, I would point out I am a capital project manager executive with $2 billion of responsibility. I would say that on behalf of my colleagues in our real estate department, that the acquisition of all 4 parcels has been rather complicated. The real estate department moved forward in a very robust manner in acquiring the first 3. I do want to point out before we get to the 4th one, which is your immense question in terms of focus, it was the fact that we were faced with similar situations with the value of the Double T Diner. Not only did we have a value of the actual property, we had a value for the improvement to the property, and then we had an ongoing facility that was obviously in operation as a restaurant. We now, with Walgreens, is a little different scenario. My understanding, again, I'm also relaying what I'm aware of with my colleagues in the real estate division, is that we initially offered for a property that was being leased at a cost of $43,000 a month. It's been vacant for 4 years, and the person receiving the said $43,000 a month is in absolutely no rush to sell that cash flow and get rid of it. In the meantime, after establishing the value of the real estate and its improvement, the real estate department subsequently found out that there was, in fact, a fee simple lease on the property. So it is my understanding at this point in time, those 3 aspects, that is, 1, the establishment of the acquisition value of the lease, 2, the value of the property, which is in fact on the corner of Marketplace and Route 24, highly visible, immensely accessible to Harford County citizens, and 3, the actual improvement of the building itself. Now, I would offer one other comment, and that is there's been many questions as to the increased value of acquisition of this property. I personally have $9 billion worth of development experience in my 73 years, and one of the things that we had proposed to our colleagues in real estate was if, in fact, the actual acquisition value of said Walgreens does increase above what we hoped that would not increase to. What we had proposed in project management is we would keep the Walgreens facility and, quite frankly, add a district court to it, and it would become the new public lobby there on Marketplace and Route 24. Our estimated savings in that case, by keeping the building, it's a shell, it's a typical commercial building, is to take the skin off of it. The ceiling height is really quite appropriate for a lobby into one of our new fantastic district courts, and we would build the building next to it with the courthouses itself. That would be our strategy. So I would offer that as a creative solution to possibly a budget concern that our friends in the legislature do have, that perhaps the final acquisition of the property exceeded what we originally started out to do several years ago. As a matter of history, I would also point out that I had the pleasure of developing the Silver Spring District Court, and the original estimates for acquisition of those 3 parcels were far below, I want to say that again, far below the final acquisition price. At that point in time in 2000, I believe we paid $44.6 million on a piece of property that we thought was only several million dollars. We paid far less for our acquisition of the Rockville property, which on Route 28 is the former library for Montgomery County and Rockville. So these things do occur. We don't always have control as to the market conditions. We also don't have control as to who owns the property. We also don't have control as to whether the property is being held, in fact, for a tax advantage, and their reluctance to sell is because it will ultimately affect their tax obligation to the IRS.
Okay, and then the last question, as far as an alternative plan, if the fourth parcel can't be acquired for the Harford County building, you know, you guys have indicated it would have to be a taller building, more expensive, more steel, more elevators, less parking. Has a cost comparison been done, again, for comparing, acquiring the fourth parcel and conducting or constructing the taller alternative option?
No, not yet, and I'll tell
Okay.
you. I'll tell you why.
Well,
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
we have a lot of witnesses, so I just want to know whether or not
No,
it has
the
been
answer is
done,
not
and
yet.
can it be provided to us, and what's the timeline on when that will be completed?
That would not be achievable until we have a firm price on the value of the property and whether we can afford to buy said property. If
Okay.
we cannot afford to buy said property, we'll then undergo a study to go into a high-rise building right there on Route 24.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no other questions, we thank you so much for this panel, and I believe there is one public witness on this budget. That would be, actually,
Thank you very much.
that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Chair.
And that will conclude the hearing on the judiciary. We'll move on to the military department and our analyst, Yashadara Rai. Ms. Rai, if you could proceed with your analysis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. I am Yashodhara Rai, and I'll be presenting the fiscal 27 capital budget analysis for the military department. Cover charts on pages 1 and 2 show that the 5-year CIP includes 7 projects. Only the new Hagerstown Vehicle Maintenance Shop, VMS, receives funding in fiscal 27. Key observations begin at the bottom of page 2 and highlights that the Part 1 and 2 facility program for the new Joint Force Headquarters at Camp Fretard is estimated to be completed by September 26. No additional design funding is planned for this project until fiscal 2030. The other key observation on the next page notes that the fiscal 27 capital funding for 4 projects have been deferred to fiscal 28 due to project delays, and the fiscal 29 funding for 1 project has been deferred to fiscal 2030 to maintain a manageable capital project portfolio for the department. An update on the Annapolis Readiness Center appears at the top of page 4 and notes that Part 1 facility program for this project is complete. Moving on to the discussion on the new Hagerstown VMS capital project, this project receives $500,000 in GEO bonds and $3.25 million in federal funds through the congressionally directed spending in fiscal 27 to begin design of the project. This project is fully federally funded, and the $500,000 in GEO bonds will be reimbursed when the federal fund will be available for drawdown. Project design is scheduled to begin in October 2026. Construction is anticipated to begin in October 2031 and be completed by October 2033. The 2026 CIP estimates the total project cost at $29 million, which is $7 million higher than last year's CIP. The department should comment on the reason for the increased project cost. The department notes that the federal funds are required to be encumbered by December 2026, and the project is required to reach 35% design by August 2027. The department should comment on its timeline to begin solicitation for an initial design contract. The department also plans to renovate the existing VMS as part of the Hagerstown Readiness Center renovation project after the new VMS project is completed in fiscal 2033. However, the construction of the Hagerstown Readiness Center is estimated to begin in fiscal 2031. This is 2 years earlier than the completion of the VMS project. The department should clarify on the timing of the 2 projects. Beginning at the bottom of page 5 through page 7 are the 6 out-year projects. Fiscal 27 funding for for 4 projects, namely the Glen Burnie, White Oak, Frederick, and Rawle Readiness Center renovation projects are deferred to fiscal 28. This is due to the revised project schedule. This also includes deferring the pre-authorized GEO bonds of $2.68 million for the Frederick Readiness Center. Similarly, fiscal 29 funding for the Hagerstown Readiness Center renovation project is deferred to fiscal 2030. The new Joint Force Headquarters at Camp Fretted, which appears on page 7, received $750,000 in GEO bonds in prior authorization. As mentioned earlier, the Part 1 and 2 facility program for this project is estimated to be complete by September 2026. However, no further design funding is planned until fiscal 2030. DLS recommends deauthorizing the $750,000 in prior authorization to better align the funding with the project schedule. The bottom of page 7 provides an update on the military department's 3 properties being divested. The Cadenceville Readiness Center at Baltimore County, which was previously identified to facilitate the construction of a cannabis incubator, is no longer considered a viable site for a cannabis incubator. The department notes that Baltimore County and the Department of General Services are developing a right of entry agreement for Baltimore County to conduct a facility assessment. The divestment of Cade Readiness Center is pending on the availability of another readiness center to transfer the unit currently occupying the Cade Readiness Center. Exhibit 1 on page 9 shows the percentage of the state's major Air and Army facilities in fully functional status between fiscal 21 and 25. The Maryland Air National Guard facilities consistently maintain 100% functionality, and the Maryland Army National Guard facility functionality remains at 28% in fiscal 25. DLS recommendations appear on page 3. DLS recommends concurring with the governor's allowance for PAYGO and to deauthorize the $750,000 in GEO bonds for the new Joint Force Headquarters. This is the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Rye. Questions from the subcommittee? Seeing none, we will call on Major General Janine Burkhead and your panel, if you will, join us at the desk and go ahead and proceed with your response. Thank you so much.
Apologies, Major General Burkhead cannot be here due to current situations.
I see.
So, Honorable Chair, Vice Chair, members of the Capital Budget Subcommittee, my name is Brigadier General Andrew Collins, and I'm honored to present the capital budget testimony for the Maryland Military Department. With me today is Dr. Linda Weaver, our Chief Financial Officer, as well as Mr. Mark Freedy, our Deputy Construction Officer. We'd like to take the opportunity to thank our DLS analyst, Ms. Rye, and our DBM analyst, Mr. Radar, for their continued support. Before highlighting our key projects, I want to underscore why these investments matter. Every Maryland National Guard Readiness Center serves as a power projection platform, not only to respond to emergencies here at home, but to mobilize soldiers and airmen for overseas missions as well. Since September 11th, the Army has transformed dramatically. The equipment our soldiers carry and the training they require demand modern, purpose-built facilities. Many of our current readiness centers were not designed for today's force, and our capital program corrects that gap. Our top capital priority is the White Oak Readiness Center, which stands at 60% design. This project is on the Chief of Staff of the Army's unfunded priority list for FY27 construction funding. MMD will also pursue congressionally directed spending in parallel to ensure this project is fully funded. Our second capital priority is the Joint Force Headquarters at Camp Fretted. We received $750,000 in GEO bonds for FY26 and are developing the Part 1 and Part 2 facility program for submission by fall of 26. We concur with the DLS recommendation to deauthorize the $750,000 to align funding with the revised design schedule. Our department was asked to report on the Hagerstown Vehicle Maintenance Shop project regarding the $7 million increase in total project costs for the Hagerstown VMS project. The program amounts have been increased by an estimated $1.25 million for design and $6 million for construction. as a result of preliminary project cost estimate reviews in collaboration with DGS indicating the square footage costs were too low. To be clear, this project is 100% federally funded through a CDS earmark. Additionally, the Maryland Army National Guard has received notification from National Guard Bureau of the approved CDS request. Once federal funding is received at the NGB level and the project documentation is validated, NGB will issue the Design Authority Memo. The Maryland Military Department and National Guard Bureau will execute the Master Cooperative Agreement, and funding will be released to the Maryland Army National Guard. This process is anticipated to be complete in May 2026. Once funding is received from National Guard Bureau, the Maryland Military Department will issue a fund certification to DGS for professional services, solicitation, and award, which must be obligated by December of '26. Regarding the two projects in Hagerstown, to be clear, the Hagerstown Readiness Center project and the Vehicle Maintenance Shop project are no longer interdependent due to conflicts in project scheduling. Both units that are currently stationed there will be stationed at alternate locations during the construction. The Frederick Readiness Center anticipates a construction solicitation by fall of 2026 with a completion in winter or spring of 2028. In closing, the Maryland Military Department, with our DLS analyst PAYGO recommended actions and GEO bond recommended actions. MMD's unique federal state funding strategy depends on the continued active support of DBM and DGS to fully leverage every federal dollar available to Maryland. We're available for any questions.
Thank you all very much. You said Brigadier General?
That's correct.
Mr. Collins, thank you so much. Any questions from the subcommittee? Just quickly, I appreciated y'all's response on the $7 million cost increase on the Hagerstown Vehicle Maintenance Shop. But can you tell us why were the original square foot assumptions materially below the DGS cost models?
Certainly, I'd like to go ahead.
Yes, Mark Pretty, Maryland Army National Guard. Sir, the square footage costs originally estimated in the programming documents for the National Guard Bureau were competitively on the lower side. In conversations with DGS and Department of Budget Management, it was recommended that we increase those costs. So we elevated the costs to ensure of escalation and consume square foot costs. Okay.
I guess that answers my question. I'll move on and we can follow up with that offline. As to the Army facility functionality, which is indicated, I believe, at only 28%, is that correct?
That sounds about right.
Okay. I believe the goal is to get to 95% functionality, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. What is the pathway to that, and can you give us the current, when the Army facility functionality will exceed 50%?
I would say the answer to that question clearly depends on how much money that we receive in our operating budget. Most of our facilities have air units, electrical systems, rooftops, various items that cause that rating to be so low. In order to get those up to speed requires a significant investment in order to repair, replace those items on those facilities and to get those buildings into a condition where they can be at that 95% plus mark. We could certainly go into how much that would cost, but like I said, it would be a significant investment moving forward. The good thing I can share with you is that most of our facilities, depending on which facility it is and whether it's on state or federal land, can come in the form of 75, 25% split, where the feds pick up 75, the state picks up 25, 50, 50, 60, 40, depending on the facility. The good news there is that whatever the state invests in our operating budget to fix those facilities comes with a federal match as well. So I hope that answers your question. I'll be more than happy to provide more details if you need them.
Yeah, I would love to know, I guess, that number, and then if you know that number, then you'll know once you are, once this budget is passed and you understand what operational dollars you're working with, the timeline that can occur. Is that correct?
Certainly. I mean, we already have a list of projects by building, by item, that clearly delineates the purpose, the function, the cost, and if we were to receive those funds, we could certainly prepare those items.
Okay, would love a follow-up on that. Last question, talking about the 47.6 million deferral. Are those delays based on capacity, federal approval timelines, or internal project management constraints? Can you explain that?
I guess the best way I could explain that is based on other state fiscal priorities that these we concur with our DBM analysts to shift those projects to the right.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from the subcommittee? Seeing none, I believe we are, that concludes our hearing on the military. Thank you all so very much for your testimony. And we will move on to Department of Natural Resources.
Thank you, sir.
And call on our DLS analyst, Mr. Andrew Gray. Mr. Gray, you can go right ahead with your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll now present the Department of Natural Resources Fiscal 2027 Capital Budget Analysis. You see on page 1 there's $159.2 million in the authorization for fiscal 2027. In terms of the PAYGO recommended actions on page 3, we're recommending a Baltimore City direct grant spending spreadsheet be provided 2 times this calendar year. And for GEO bond recommended actions, we're recommending approving all authorizations, pre-authorizations, and deauthorizations. And in terms of the deauthorization in the fiscal 2027 capital budget, this deauthorization for the critical maintenance program for 5 projects that are authorized in fiscal 2023 capital budget. There's also a pre-authorization for the Rocky Gap State Park Campground Improvements Project in Allegheny County, and that's $1.4 million for fiscal 2028. In terms of the overall funding, page 5, the request shows the $159.2 million, $69.1 million in special funds, $6 million in federal funds, and $84 million in general obligation bonds. The general obligation bonds are replacing largely transfer tax and some waterway improvement fund monies, so that's part of the governor's overall spending plan and kind of budget balancing plan. On page 7, Exhibit 2 reflects the increase in the transfer tax funding. There's both an increase in the estimated money coming in, and there's also less of an underattainment, which for our purposes just means there's more money. There's $98.5 million difference between fiscal 2026 and fiscal 2027, but you're not going to see all of that because a lot of it's being replaced with general obligation bonds. Moving now to page 8, we have Exhibit 3. The increase between the 2 years is $86.8 million between fiscal 2026 and fiscal 2027 for programs traditionally funded with transfer tax funding. And then on page 9, Exhibit 4 shows the program funding changes between the 2 years. We're not going to talk about a bunch of programs because they don't have any changes. The program Open Space, Green Space, Equity Program, Ocean City Beach Maintenance, and Community Parks and Playgrounds all receive funding that remains at the same levels as they were. In terms of the funding that is changing, the program Open Space state and local funding, bond funding goes up by around $49.8 million, and that's for the program Open Space local allocation that's being bonded instead. The Natural Resources Development Fund shows $800,000 here, but there's actually $8.7 million in the Maryland Environmental Services budget for the purpose of wastewater and water infrastructure in parks. And then you're seeing $13.4 million in Rural Legacy Program funding being bonded, $13.1 million for the Waterway Improvement Program. And oysters go down by about $2 million. In terms of the GEO bond replacement money, this is page 10. It's the $85 million in total being diverted and then being replaced. And you can ignore the $100 million figure for Program Open Space Local. That's an error. Exhibit 6 on page 11 reflects the transfers to the general fund. So the BRFA, or General Budget Reconciliation Financing Act of 2025, redirected $25 million. This is for fiscal 2026 through 2029. You see the 26 transfer and how it was allocated. And then in terms of the difference, what you're seeing is that the transfer tax funding going up means there's program open space state land acquisition money that's being appropriated. That means that that money can then be diverted to the general fund. So that defrays some of the impact, the Rural Legacy Program and Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Program, in terms of how much they're transferring to the general fund in fiscal 2027. In terms of the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act provisions for the 2026 session, first one there is the program open space revenues are redirected to the general fund and replaced with bond funding, $71.7 million. There's also a component there, $188,000 or so POS local funds for that are reverted to a special account and that are being replaced with bond funding because that money is being transferred to the general fund. There's a requirement that the Heritage Conservation Fund and other funds be included in the program open space state land acquisition balance. This is important because the operating budget requires that the program open space state land acquisition balance is at least $80 million. If it is, then they can use any amount above that for operating purposes in the Maryland Park Service. The repurposing of funds for state land acquisition under program open space is the last item on page 12. So that's a $980,000 project that did not go forward. So that's going to be used for land acquisition funding instead. And then you're also seeing on page 13, the Waterway Improvement Fund, $13.1 million transfer, and then going to be replaced, obviously, with the general obligation bonds. Page 13 also, program open space land acquisition local program. Just like to point out that it's $85.8 million request there. And then the local allocation is in Appendix 2 at the very end of this analysis. Ocean City Beach Maintenance is on page 21. Talking about this because the overall cost for the beach maintenance replenishment project has gone up significantly from $18 million to $43 million. There was no funding for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in the previous budget to actually do that project, so we've had to delay it. We actually do see now $20 million from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in the federal budget, which is great, but that's not going to be enough to kind of do our whole $43 million scoped project. So everybody's going to meet and talk about what this new funding level means in terms of the work that can be done. The Waterway Improvement Program is on page 22, and I would like to take you to page 24 in particular to talk about the fiscal 2026 working appropriations. So $24 million in special funds authorized for this program in fiscal 2026. The administration notes that it's actually intending to only spend $20 million, reduce that appropriation by $4 million. We have not seen a budget amendment for that purpose. My understanding is that the administration is just going to reduce the amount of spending, which would then allow for some operating expenses that could be covered for the Summers Cove Marina and other needs. The Department of Legislative Service does recommend that DNR comment on why it plans to do that, when this information will be conveyed as a budget amendment, and what impact this will have on projects in fiscal 2026. And then on page 27, there's a brief comment there about the oyster restoration funding. So funding is about $1 million is being programmed for Eastern Bay in the fiscal 2027 budget. However, there was previous year legislation that indicated that really there should be a 5-year evaluation before any funding is provided to Eastern Bay after fiscal 2026. So funding of $1 million in fiscal 2027 is obviously doesn't comport with that. DLS recommends that DNR comment on the timing of the completion of the 5-year evaluation of the oyster replenishment, which is currently projected for fiscal 2028. And the kind of the overall activity, given that activities in terms of the evaluation, the oyster replenishment, restoration, and aquaculture activities, and just the general picture there, where are we going? Moving now to the issue 1 on page 28. This concerns the engineering and construction program within DNR. Page 29, Exhibit 8 reflects the substantial increase in requests for new critical maintenance projects. So a lot of people came out of the woodwork when the Great Maryland Outdoors Act was in play. They said there were a lot of projects that needed to be done that were not previously identified. That means that there's a skyrocketing in terms of the requests for the new critical maintenance projects, which then reduced, obviously, DNR's ability to kind of get those projects done in terms of the overall percentage. Then on page 31, we'll talk about the 2 Great Maryland Outdoors Act funds, the Park System Critical Maintenance Fund, which receives $70 million in 2024 to address critical maintenance projects, and has a deadline of July 1, 2029 in terms of spending that money. And then there's the Park System Capital Improvements and Acquisition Fund, $80 million in fiscal 2024. Then on page 31, you see that exhibit reflecting the funding through February 18, 2026. So 2026 is not the complete year in terms of how much funding is going to be spent in that particular year. But there is still a lot more work to be done, obviously, between the $12.7 million has been spent so far in fiscal 2026 cumulatively, and the $70 million goal in fiscal 29. In terms of some of the other components of the Great Maryland Outdoors Act, there's the Asset Management and Facility Condition Assessment, Inventory Assessment, and Maintenance Prioritization on the bottom of page 31, and a couple of other provisions as well that DLS recommends the administration comment on where they are with all of that, the status of all those, and then also comment on the likelihood of reaching that $70 million spending goal for the Park System Critical Maintenance Fund. The final issue on page 32 concerns the Baltimore City Direct Grant spreadsheet. You already know there's a committee narrative request here, a recommendation for that spreadsheet be provided. The concern was in last year's budget, we saw 5 projects that were not going forward, so the money was being repurposed. Therefore, it really was incumbent upon us to kind of understand more about what's going on with the Baltimore City Direct Grant funding. The spreadsheet provided indicates that there's still funding from quite a few years ago that has not been spent, say for $600,000 of the $1 million budget for the fiscal 2015 Gwynns Falls Leakin Park Wenins Nature Center. So that's concerning, obviously, in terms of projects that have not been going through. GLS recommends committee narrative to complete that understanding by providing 2 reports on the spending. Unless there are any questions, that concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Any questions from the subcommittee for our analysts? All right, seeing none, we will call on Secretary for Department of Natural Resources, Mr. Kurtz, and our good colleague from Montgomery County.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the subcommittee. For the record, Josh Kurtz, Secretary of the Department of Natural Resources. I'm joined by the Director of Capital Projects, Mr. Eric Ludke, for any technical questions. I'd like to thank Mr. Gray for his detailed analysis of our capital budget. I think at the core of it, DNR's capital budget is really the investments that we are making together in people's access to our natural resources, whether that be able to fish, to hunt, to hike, to birdwatch, whatever it might be. That's the goal of our capital budget. When you look through our capital budget, there's a couple really exciting pieces I wanted to highlight. First, on the aquatic side, we're going to do 2 new hatcheries, basically the refurbishment of one, our Albert Powell hatchery. We're projected to increase the amount of put and take fishery we have across the state of Maryland by 37% when that project is completed. The second is a new mussel hatchery, which is paid for in large part by the settlement with the Conowingo Dam. This is to help do a lot more clean water restoration in our freshwater spaces across the state. And then as well, and Mr. Gray touched on this, the oyster funding that we have for Eastern Bay this year. The Great Maryland Outdoors Act makes up a large part of our budget, and it's one that we've been working really hard to make sure that we're able to spend down and meet what was about 500 projects that were in that critical maintenance bucket that had not been taken care of, which was why Great Maryland Outdoors Act was passed. I'm really excited this year to come before you and tell you all, well, last year we spent about $5.8 million. We're on track to double that this year, and so we are on pace to meet that FY29 funding. To get into the analysis, for number one, we do concur, and we will submit the reports on the Baltimore City direct grant funding at the times identified by DLS. For response number 2, we do concur with the GO bond authorizations, and that's on page 4. The 3 substantive pieces I wanted to talk about was the Waterway Improvement Fund and the $20 million in FY26 rather than the $24 million. We would be happy to do a budget amendment if the committee would prefer. Our plan was to let that revert over to next year so we could use that on additional projects. What ended up happening was we looked at the funds coming in for that, and really what we saw under COVID was a lot of people bought boats, and that brought a lot of money into the department. The boat buying has really fallen off, and so one of the reasons we pushed that out was to ensure that as we're seeing less funding in that account, we're able to kind of slowly soften that and get back to where we kind of historically have been, about $16 million a year of going to local grants. We still put grant money into our local communities. Every county that applied did receive grant funding. They just did not receive all of the projects that they applied for. In terms of Eastern Bay Eastern Bay restoration requires us to do 5 years of planting and then do our assessment. We will not have that 5th year completed until 27, and so we'll be doing that assessment in 2028 once that 5th year is complete. The reason for that is so that we can compare them kind of apples to apples with the other restoration sanctuaries across the bay. And then when it comes to the Great Maryland Outdoors Act, which I touched on, we do believe we are now on track to meet the FY29 spend. We have a long list of projects, and we're now meeting the pace because of the way that we restructured our procurement department, brought in a director of capital projects, a lot of internal change, and then also thank you to you all for upping some of our authorities in terms of the amount of money that we can spend for our own procurement, which has also helped us as well. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you all may have. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Secretary Kurtz. And I'll call on Delegate Acevero for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for your presentation. Just want to come back to the DLS budget analysis, specifically under critical maintenance project deauthorization. I noticed at Seneca Creek State Park in my district, there have been some deauthorization of funds. Can you provide a rationale as to why? And also, because Seneca Creek, not only, especially as we get to the summer months, a lot of visitors, and certainly an opportunity for folks to earn a living from that. But can you give an update on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll defer to Mr. Lutke for that.
Delegate, it's a great question. Thank you very much. Those specific projects that are being deauthorized, all of them in that bucket, including the projects at Seneca Creek State Park, are being done with other dollars. We're deauthorizing the money from that specific pot to allow us to use the dollars that were originally authorized for those projects to cover cost overages on other projects. So those projects, the renovation of the shop, the new fencing, those are actually actively being bid right now. And are among a number of projects you're going to see at Seneca Creek over the next year, year and a half, including, at long last, reconstruction of the playground there. And we've begun design work on the restoration of the Clopper Lake Dam as well.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
All right. I wanted to ask about the Park System Critical Maintenance Fund. Can you give us the actual spending in FY25 and what is the precise projected spending from FY26?
And this is for the Critical Improvement and Acquisition Fund?
Yes.
Yep. So
You said critical, sir, sorry, critical maintenance or the capital improvement acquisition?
Sorry, the capital improvement.
Yep, so FY25, we spent $5.8 million. As of the 18th of February of this year, we spent $6.17 million, and we expect to be well over 10.5 by the end of this fiscal year. Those projects, right now we're kind of in a hold period because it's cold. We do most of our construction work in the early fall, late spring, and into the summer. And so we will be double what we spent last year in terms of that funding.
Okay. And then as to the Baltimore City Direct Grant recommendation from DLS, the spreadsheet that's being recommended, can that include reimbursement status, total authorized funding, total drawn, and remaining balance for each project?
Yeah, I will triple check that we have that information because we get it with Baltimore City, but anything you would like us to include in that spreadsheet, we'd be happy to provide.
Yeah, and then can you designate those to be distinguished by the legislatively specified projects from those specified by Baltimore City?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
All right. Seeing no other questions, I believe we have, give me 1 second. A couple of different pieces of public testimony. So, gentlemen, you all can step back. I would ask that you remain for the public testimony. I believe we have several citizens in attendance to testify in person. And so I will call, I believe it should be 11 folks, but we'll see who's all here. I'll start with Susan Shingledecker. Are you here? Please come on up. Tim Casey. Riley Lehman. Riley Lehman? Yeah. You come on up. And Kate Kerr? Here. Please come on up. And Carol Bean, are you also here? Ms. Bean? All right. We will start with Ms. Shingledecker. You have 2 minutes apiece. Please go right ahead with your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman Ruff, members of the committee. My name is Susan Shingledecker, and I'm CEO of Chesapeake Conservancy, the only watershed-wide organization focused both on land conservation and stream restoration to achieve a healthier Chesapeake Bay. I know you've all had a long day and it's snowing outside, so you've received our written testimony, and I'll keep this to a minute or less. To say that with regard to program open space and Maryland's vital land conservation programs, Chesapeake Conservancy supports the capital budget as proposed. As you know, land conservation isn't just about creating or enhancing parks for better mental and physical wellness. Among other benefits, land conservation helps improve water quality, ensures local food supply, and it provides resilience against a changing climate. Conservation helps slow the biodiversity decline, helps sustain resource-based industries, and connects the present with the past. These days, land conservation and restoration is largely targeted and coordinated with willing landowners and a vibrant network of on-the-ground conservation nonprofits that depend on full cash funding in order to bring about these incredible conservation projects. Chesapeake Conservancy's state-of-the-art data and geospatial tools allow for immensely targeted conservation and restoration, thereby maximizing state investments. We understand the tough fiscal challenges that exist, but respectfully request that there be no additional cuts or diversions to Maryland's lauded land conservation programs. On behalf of Chesapeake Conservancy, we greatly thank you for your service and for your continued support of conservation and restoration of land in our state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Casey.
Good afternoon, Chairman Ruff, Vice Chair Chang, and committee members. My name's Tim Casey. I'm with the Friends of Maryland State Parks. We're an all-volunteer 501c3 nonprofit. Fully support the governor's appropriation for critical maintenance, capital improvement and acquisition, and natural resources development fund. Please do not cut any of those funds. Following on very inspiring testimony or comments by Secretary Kurtz and Eric Lukey, two critical points we'd like to make. One is that there is an issue with DGS that instead of piling on, because we heard that in prior testimony, there are 5 dedicated positions that have had a very difficult time being filled by DGS that are dedicated to the projects that were just covered by the DNR. These projects are critical, and that manpower is critical. And ever since the bill was passed and became law in June 1st, 2022, there's been difficulty filling this. So this, in my version, is a strategic, systemic issue that I don't know exactly what the legislature can do to help, but we'd like to see if you can do something about that and get those positions filled. The second item is related to that. The good news was covered earlier. 5 new authorized positions from the Great Maryland Outdoors Act for engineering construction in the DNR were authorized, and good quality people have been hired. So we are making progress on that was just reported. However, we'd like to see if you could accelerate, let me put it this way. We now have the $400,000 authority for DNR that was moved from $200,000 authority for capital projects to $400,000, I believe, last year. And in that time, excellent progress is made, which had been reported. We would like to ask, would the legislature consider removing the sunset of that $400,000, which would then revert to $200,000 in 2029, and also approve an increase in that authority from $400,000 to $500,000. And the progress that was reported by Mr. Lukey could continue to accelerate the expectations that we had with the Great Maryland Outdoors Act. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and subcommittee members. My name is Riley Lehman, and I'm the Executive Director of the Baltimore County Land Trust Coalition, which is a nonprofit dedicated to advancing land conservation and stewardship alongside each of the 5 land trusts in our county. Land conservation is important because it ensures that wildlife habitat is maintained, that our natural resources are protected, and that access to nature and open space is equitably distributed and convenient for all. The Rural Legacy Program is essential to the work of the land trusts in Baltimore County and the advancement of land conservation across the state. Funding from this program allows land trusts to acquire new conservation easements and steward existing ones. Over 8,000 acres have been conserved through the Rural Legacy Program in Baltimore County to date. It was for years and has been one of the most impactful contributions to the permanent conservation of agriculturally and ecologically valuable land across the state. While the success of the program cannot be overstated, there is still important conservation work to be done. Development pressure on natural land and open space land in Baltimore County has never been stronger. Land conservation encourages responsible, denser development in our existing urban areas. Once our natural and open space areas are gone, they are hard, if not impossible, to get back. Rural Legacy Program funding will allow land trusts in Baltimore County and across the state to continue their work in protecting our valued agricultural and natural resources for generations to come. As such, the Baltimore County Land Trust Coalition supports the budget as proposed and respectfully requests that the Rural Legacy Program continue to be funded. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Kerr?
Good afternoon, Chair Ruff, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Kate Kerr, and I'm representing the Maryland, D.C. chapter of the Nature Conservancy. TNC is one of the largest nonprofit landowners in the state. We focus on delivering data-driven, on-the-ground solutions that secure clean water, air, and healthy living environments. TNC supports advancing the administration's proposed DNR capital budget for FY27. We support programs and investments that ensure economic and environmental benefits are enhanced today and made sustainable for tomorrow, and we believe the proposed budget for DNR broadly reflects this. Environmental protection and robust climate programs are a fraction of the state's budget but provide outsized benefits to all Marylanders. Organizations like TNC can leverage these funds and multiply the benefits. For example, TNC and DNR partnered to leverage the Chesapeake and Atlantic Coastal Bays Trust Fund allocation to restore more than 3,000 acres of wetlands and forested buffers in the Pocomoke River watershed. That project is estimated to remove over 70,000 pounds of nitrogen and over 7,500 pounds of phosphorus per year to advance our Bay goals. We're also currently partnering with DNR, the Ruffled Grouse Society, and the Maryland Extension Service to leverage DNR's Woodlands Incentive Program for improved forest management in Western Maryland. We know that our state faces a challenging FY27 budget cycle, and TNC wishes to express our thanks to the General Assembly and the administration for your continued efforts to preserve funding for foundational environmental programs, including those I've already mentioned, as well as program open space, green space equity, rural legacy, and the Waterways Improvement Fund. For these reasons, we urge this committee to advance the administration's proposed DNR capital budget, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Kerr. Any questions for this panel? Delegate Acevaro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to this panel and for the work that each of your organizations do to protect these very important spaces. Something came to mind during your testimony is right now, private country clubs and golf courses in our state do not pay their fair share in assessment. Therefore, state and local governments don't get what they otherwise would from those spaces. And one of the rationales that we hear often is that from private country clubs and golf course owners is that we are preserving open and green space. We're encouraging, similar to these programs that we just mentioned, preservation of land, et cetera. But these spaces aren't often accessible to the public, nor is it something that is for public use, right? It's more so for private benefit. But my question to you all is this really, keeping with the intent of program open space or around like rural legacy programs that preserve space and ensure that it is accessible for the public? Is that really the case?
I would say that I can't speak for the broader programs necessarily, but for Rural Legacy, the purpose of that program is in large part to acquire private conservation easements on privately owned land. And in taking the long view, I would say that not to place value, I guess, necessarily on the golf courses and private country clubs, but the preservation of open space is valuable in the long run for the public as, like I said, once land is developed, it's a lot. If land is kept open, even if it is in the form of a golf course or a country club, that enables us to use that in the future, perhaps for public access, or it's like a long-term view that I'm laying out here, I guess, that once it's developed, once it's concrete, that is harder to revert to open space, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Anybody else want to add? Great. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate, and thank you to this panel. We'll move on to our next panel. Thank you all for taking the time to come and testify. In this order, we'll take Owen Bailey, Jim Brown, Bill Crouch, Kirk Mante, and Matt Stegman. And whoever gets to the desk first can go ahead and start their testimony.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the subcommittee. For the record, my name is Owen Bailey. I'm the Director of Land Use and Policy for Eastern Shore Land Conservancy. I'll speak here on behalf of my colleague Carol Bean, but I'm also the Chair of Partners for Open Space. You have our written comments, so I'll be brief. The transfer tax, or what's often referred to as Program Open Space, is an amazing program that has returned dividends to the entire state and is further supported through the strong partnerships between the amazing staff at DNR and the dedicated environmental nonprofits that build on those financial dividends. The various programs which you've heard about from other panel members today offer a balance of sustainable land use that helps to protect our most precious natural resources and help keep the land in Maryland. And with that, we urge a favorable report on the proposed budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Crouch, and I'm the Maryland State Director for the Conservation Fund, a national 501c3 nonprofit land trust. The Conservation Fund appreciates the opportunity to support Program Open Space, and specifically the state side of Program Open Space. The state side of Program Open Space generally provides for publicly accessible lands, and DNR prioritized at the direction of the governor opening lands to public access, recognizing their economic and health benefits. Recently, DNR acquired what will be the first state park in Wycomico County. The Watepquin Creek acquisition is 445 acres and will bring educational and recreational opportunities on the Delmarva Peninsula. Every county in the state will have a state park. The state side of the program Open Space makes these acquisitions possible. Even with this impressive milestone having been met, many parks still have to close due to capacity issues, so the demand for publicly accessible lands remains. According to the Maryland Outdoor Recreation Economic Commission in 2019, the outdoor recreation industry in Maryland contributed $14 billion in spending, generated 109,000 direct jobs, and generated $951 million in state and local tax revenues. Lands acquired with the state side of Program Open Space are not just idle green spaces. Having readily available funds to acquire publicly accessible, high conservation value lands has allowed the state to seize on opportunities as they arise. For example, the Jesuit transaction completed in 2017, DNR, in partnership with the Conservation Fund and the Nature Conservancy, acquired over 4,400 acres of not just historic land, but land that represents the very origins of Maryland. Without Program Open Space stateside, these lands likely become condominiums. We fully... Sure, thank you. We fully appreciate the budget decisions that are necessary. I would urge the committee to not just look at Program Open Space as a line item on a budget, but keep in mind that these protected lands help keep Marylanders healthy while serving as significant economic drivers. Thank you.
Thank you. Go right ahead, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, thank you for having me. My name is Jim Brown. I'm with Audubon Mid-Atlantic, and we respectfully submit this testimony in support of the governor's proposed budget for the Department of Natural Resources. We acknowledge the challenges of the projected budget, and we commend the administration's support for DNR in the face of these challenges. Audubon Mid-Atlantic is the regional office of the National Audubon Society. We represent over 35,000 Marylanders who advocate for the protection of birds, bird habitat, and policies aiming to protect both birds and human communities in the face of increasing environmental challenges, habitat loss, pollution, and climate change. We could not do this work without the Department of Natural Resources, and I'd like to highlight two project areas where our strong collaboration with DNR shows that investments in the agency go much further than just the agency. The first is program open space and the important bird areas. In Maryland, program open space and the transfer tax are used to acquire and protect what we call important bird areas, or IBAs. IBAs are in every region of the state, excuse me, and they are identified by both the National Audubon Society and DNR as places that are critical to the local and hemispheric importance of the survival of resident and migrating birds as they travel through Maryland. The 44 IBAs in Maryland represent the highest quality remaining habitats for vulnerable bird species, and they often overlap with our most significant and most visited natural public areas and public lands. Cuts to the program open space and the transfer tax put this type of conservation and public access program at risk. In addition to bird habitat, these special places also provide natural climate solutions, they support local economies, and they buffer communities from the impact of climate change. The second and last program I'll mention today is a project called Marshes for Tomorrow. Together with Department of Natural Resources, Audubon is investing significantly in the protection of Maryland's coastal marshes. Investing in those marshes does not just protect bird habitat, but it supports Maryland's economy by protecting the $600 million fishing industry, $1 billion agriculture industry, and the $951 million outdoor recreation industry. So I'll close by saying investments in DNR go much further than just the agency and just our habitat. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Stegman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be before you today. Matt Stegman with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. We are generally very supportive of DNR and its capital program, and to everything the other panelists said about land preservation, I would add a me too. But I'm actually here to talk about something different. I want to talk to you very briefly about oyster restoration. Maryland's large-scale restoration program is a global model that returns tens of millions of dollars in co-benefits every year, most notably more productive fisheries for blue crabs and oysters that are in non-sanctuary areas. The budget that you have for the department does have a 41% reduction year over year for oyster restoration funding, and if you look kind of what's planned in future years, is sort of a dip this year over what we did last year that lasts for a couple years, and then it ramps up in the future. But when you have that kind of start and stop approach, there is a additional, and we would argue unnecessary, cost that comes along with that. Oyster restoration is a infrastructure intensive practice. So there's a cost associated when you ramp up and slow down in terms of equipment, demand for oyster spat, things like that. Having a consistent state investment, it leverages additional private investment, which includes small-scale restoration in areas abutting our larger sanctuary areas, and a culture of oyster stewardship. To that end, I think you should have with your materials a letter from a couple dozen oyster gardeners talking about why our restoration efforts are important to them. So, again, oysters are a fundamental part of the Bay ecosystem, making sure that our restoration efforts are cost-effective and scientifically sound by keeping them as kind of close to even in the years ahead as possible would be something that would be really smart use of our money. So with that, if this committee can find the capacity, we'd appreciate you considering making some enhancements to this year's oyster restoration funding.
Thank you. We appreciate you keeping your testimony as smooth as a pearl. Thank you, Mr. Lukey. Good Lord. Yeah. All right. Figured I'd bring a little levity to the situation. Thank you to this panel. Are there any questions? Delegate Grice.
Well, first and foremost, Matt, welcome back to the Appropriations Committee.
It's always a great day whenever I'm here.
So my first question is for you. Where are you guys at on rotational harvest in our sanctuaries?
Well, there is a bill hearing coming up in Environment and Transportation on exactly that topic, I think tomorrow or Wednesday. That specific proposal, we are going to be coming in not in favor of that, but I can get you some more information offline.
Yeah, hopefully there's, okay, sure, I appreciate that. And I guess just more of a comment than a question. I guess my first comment you guys might not like, but the second one, I want to thank you all for your effort. The first is we're passing a lot of policy in the name of, for climate change, and things that are actually hurting certain industries. I always make the argument, and we've heard it here, that, there's very little data that says, hey, if Maryland were to do all these different things, that we'll see a significant change in the world's climate. But that being said, I'll also argue that we should also adapt to climate change because it is real. And what you guys are advocating for in regards to, investing money in habitat and investing money in, our wetlands and that sort of thing, that is part of, acclimating and preparing for climate change. So, one of the things that I will say as from the fiscal conservative side of the budget, the money that we're spending in preserving these assets is critically important. And I also argue too, if we're going to continue to raid a trust fund, then I think the next time I may offer an amendment that changes the name of the fund and just take out trust because it doesn't mean anything anymore. When we create a new fee or we create a new tax for a program and we say, well, this is so necessary that we have to do this. In fact, we're going to create a lockbox on this thing and call it a trust fund. Well, here we are years later, and this goes beyond two administrations. The Hogan administration did it now, and now the Moore administration is doing it. And all along, I'm making the case that it's wrong. But I do appreciate you guys and your efforts to make sure that program open space money is being spent where it should be spent. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate Prest.
I'm guessing there's a question coming, or?
Yes, that is so.
Any other questions for this panel? Delegate Asararo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I just heard my Republican colleague acknowledge that climate change is real, and thanks you all for the work that you all have done. Oh, look at that. Cut the clip. But I do want to, I want to thank this panel, to the gentleman with the very, very swanky purple tie. You had mentioned in your testimony just how much open, green, accessible space generates for our states, the economic. Can you provide me with that number again, please?
Sure.
You'd mentioned
so this was from the Maryland Outdoor Recreation Economic Commission report in 2019. The outdoor recreation industry in the state of Maryland contributed $14 billion in spending, generated 109,000 direct jobs, and generated $951 million in state and local tax revenues.
I see. Very interesting. Appreciate that. And the reason why I asked that is because, again, it just seems to me there's greater benefit to more open, green, publicly accessible space than there is a benefit to privately owned. In some cases, these are private country clubs and golf courses, and I'm speaking for my own county here, not speaking for anybody else's jurisdiction, but I happen to represent a county where we have a lot of private country clubs and golf courses that are not publicly accessible, are not meant for the public to partake in, and they're paying significantly less in property taxes. So money with millions that we would otherwise get, we're not getting, and then this land is not being accessible. It's not generating as much as, to the data that you provided, as it would if it were a publicly open space. But I'll end with my question, isn't that so? You have to respond. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Delegate. Thank you to this panel. And I believe that concludes the hearing on the Department of Natural Resources. We'll move on to the Maryland Department of Health with our DLS analyst, Naomi Komuro. And Ms. Komuro, you can proceed as soon as you're prepared to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Naomi Komuro. I'm budget analyst with DLS, and I'll be presenting the fiscal 27 budget for the Maryland Department of Health. So the fiscal 27 capital request includes $12.5 million in the Department of Health for 2 projects: the renovation of the north wing of the Clifton T. Perkins Hospital Center, and the project to demolish decommissioned buildings. On the next page, the fiscal 27 request includes $3.5 million for the Federally Qualified Health Center Grant Program and $10 million for the Community Health Facilities Grant Program. So the first state-owned project, the description begins on page 3, is the demolish decommissioned buildings, which is an effort in which MDH identifies and then demolishes vacant buildings that can no longer be used or renovated for use. The fiscal 27 request includes $103,000 for planning to demolish the dormitory at the RICA Baltimore facility. This project also will include the demolition of 2 dormitories at the Clifton T. Perkins Hospital Center, which has been delayed. Design for this portion of the project was completed in November 2025, and the construction is scheduled to begin in August 2026. The next project begins on page 5, which is the renovation of the Clifton T. Perkins North Wing. This project will expand the capacity to accept maximum security forensic patients at Perkins. And the fiscal 27 request includes $12.4 million for the project, mostly due to construction costs. This project was delayed in fiscal 26 due to an emergency HVAC project that the department anticipates completing in August 2026. And after that HVAC system is replaced, the department intends on beginning construction in September 2026. Because this facility is currently in use, construction will require MDH to move patients from Perkins to other facilities. It indicated that there is ongoing renovation at Springfield to expand capacity, and that it will relocate 22 patients to Springfield when that is completed. We have asked MDH to clarify when the renovations at Springfield will be completed and what other facilities they will move Perkins patients to. The next portion is regarding the out-year state-owned projects. So the Facility for Children project has been delayed in fiscal 2027. This unit needs to be built on the RICA Baltimore campus, and so it requires the demolition of the dormitory at RICA to be completed before that project can begin. The next section discusses the grant and loan programs in the Department of Health. So first, the Community Health Facility Grant Program. The fiscal 27 budget includes $10 million for 11 projects, which are listed on pages 8 through 10. And then under the Federally Qualified Health Center Grant Program, the fiscal 27 budget includes $3.5 million for 5 projects, which are listed on pages 11 and 12 of the analysis. Finally, DLS recommends approving all GO bond authorizations and pre-authorizations for the Department of Health, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you very much for the presentation. Are there any members of the subcommittee who have questions regarding the analysis? Okay, great, thank you very much. This afternoon, we have joining us from the Maryland Department of Health, Secretary Meena Sheshmani, and also the staff of the agency. If they could come up and provide testimony, very much appreciate. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the Capital Budget Subcommittee. For the record, my name is Clint Hackett, and I am the Deputy Secretary for Operations at the Maryland Department of Health. Joining me today is Will Andalora, who is the Director of the Department's Office of Facilities, Management, and Development. We are both representing Secretary Seshamani, who is unfortunately unable to be with us today. The Maryland Department of Health would like to thank the Governor, the Department of Budget and Management, the Department of General Services, and the Department of Legislative Services for all of their support. We would also like to thank Naomi Komuro for her in-depth and very thoughtful analysis. In the DLS analysis, the department was asked to comment on a couple of items. Firstly, MDH was asked to clarify what month and year the renovations to the Springfield Hospital Center's Muncie Building and the Hitchman Building Unit C would be completed, and if there was funding in the state budget for the expansion. MDH was also asked to specify which other facilities would be utilized to temporarily house patients from the Clifton T. Perkins Hospital Center during the North Wing renovation, given that each facility operates at capacity. Our response is as follows. So MDH has developed a plan and identified $1 million of the fiscal year 2026 operating funds to expand beds at the Springfield Hospital Center through renovation of Unit C in the Hitchman Building. In addition, MDH has established a goal of completing the renovation by the end of calendar year 2026. MDH has also developed a plan and identified $2 million of the fiscal year 2026 operating funds to renovate the Springfield Hospital's Muncie Building. This project will renovate the interior of the Muncie Building for licensure as an assisted living program and support the movement of patients in the assisted living program from Springfield Hospital Center's McKellen Building. When the assisted living program is relocated, MDH will repurpose the space within the McKellen Building to create an additional inpatient psychiatric care unit, which will then allow some patients who are currently in the Clifton T. Perkins Hospital Center to be moved to the Springfield Hospital Center, which will allow for the Perkins North Wing renovation project. This project is scheduled for completion by May of 2027 to align with the schedule of the North Wing renovation project. The combined projects will result in the potential increase of more than 40 inpatient psychiatric beds. Both projects are currently in progress and are scheduled for completion in advance of the projected timeline for patient relocation from Perkins. In closing, it is with immense gratitude that I thank the subcommittee for your time and for your consideration today. We are happy to take questions at this time.
Thank you, sir. Delegate Acevedo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation. We've heard from state employees, to include the labor union that represents those state employees around for many years, concerns around the safety at Clifton T. Perkins Hospital, understaffing, of course, but that's not what we're discussing here, but specifically the safety, the infrastructure of the building and whatnot, with these ongoing works that are going to happen, and you provided a timeline as to when where are staff going to be assigned, and is that safer than some of the concerns that were brought up around Clifton T. Perkins and why there was a need for those infrastructure works to be done?
So specifically, the question has to do with all of the work that we're doing now, how it impacts the continued safety of the staffing at those facilities. Is that fair?
That, but also where staff are being assigned while that work is being done. Is that a place, because what we don't want is essentially the union that represents those workers coming to us afterwards and saying this facility where you transferred staff is also not safe in terms of working conditions.
Yeah.
So is that as safe, if not safer, and can you provide an update as far as Clifton?
I will comment on a couple of things. I appreciate the question. So we, in the testimony, indicated that our plan was to relocate patients from the Clifton T. Perkins Hospital Center to the Springfield location. The patients that we are going to be relocating are sort of the minimum types of patients. They're not maximum security patients, so they're not going to be requiring the same level of the same concerns in terms of security don't exist with the population that will be moving to the Springfield Hospital Center. We are at this time looking to evaluate in terms of specifically your question around the movement of staff. We're looking to do an analysis to understand what, not just the staff, but what number of staff we're going to have to move to adequately support the patients that are at Springfield. So I'd say two things. It's the population that's being moved. Those aren't the maximum security population that require the additional staffing there. And Springfield, the population there isn't the same as at Clifton T. Perkins Hospital. That is that maximum security population. The intent of the redesign or the expansion of that North Wing project is that Clifton T. Perkins will become a fully, maximum security location, and the staffing will definitely be evaluated to ensure that we have not only security attendants, which I think there was some staffing provided there to sort of shore up the security at that location in a previous budget session, but we're also going to be looking at the staffing from the therapeutic perspective to ensure that we're giving the patients that that location the care that they need, because we believe that care, the more care we give to those patients, the less the likelihood of the security incidents that crop up at the facility. So we're looking at it from a security perspective at Clifton. Once we make that facility fully max, more security attendants, fully vetted security attendants, and then making sure that we have the therapeutic care in place. That's going to be really what drives down the number of incidents that we see that really impact staffing's security.
Okay, thanks for the response. Guidance? All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Forbes.
And thank you for your presentation, and thank you for your analysis. On the facility for children in the high-intensity residential treatment center, the delay, it said it was caused by the demolition of a building that needs to be demolished. Can you talk a little bit about that delay and how, if we can make up time in that project because it's so desperately needed?
Absolutely. I'm going to defer that question to our Director of Office of Facilities Management and Development, Mr. Andaloro.
Yes, thank you for the question. The project to demolish the building on the grounds of Rika Baltimore is tied to the start of the construction for the facility for children and high-intensity residential treatment center. So on the campus of Rika Baltimore, there's an old dormitory building that was first constructed as a seminary building. It hasn't been in use since around 1995, and we're working with the Department of General Services to obtain a design consultant who will help us plan the demolition of that building. Once that building is out of the way and the site has been cleared, we will, by that time, have engaged the design for the FFC, and we'll have a site that's been cleared to allow us to construct that. So these projects are running in tandem. If there is an opportunity to make up any time in the demolition of the project, it could potentially start sooner, but it would also be tied to the design of the FFC. So those two projects are closely tied together.
Thank you for that answer. And just to follow up, what is the estimated delivery date of the facility for children in the high-intensity residential treatment center?
Let me look at the exact date, but with the design being pushed out, we expect design of the project to begin this year, and construction of that project is, I believe, approximately 2 years, which will put construction in, give me 1 second.
And if you don't have it at hand, you can.
I'll have to flip through it, but if you look at the funding allocation for the project, you'll see that it pushes out to, I believe, 2030, 2031.
So those beds won't be available till then if things stay on schedule.
So at that location, the beds for the 48 beds for construction will not be available at that location until that time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Seeing no other questions, I believe that ends the hearing on MDH. Thank you both for your testimony, and we will go into our final budget hearing.
Thank you.
There's no public testimony on that. For the Department of Housing and Community Development and our DLS analyst, Emily Haskell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, my name is Emily Haskell, and I will be presenting the capital budget analysis for the Department of Housing and Community Development. I'd like to start on page 6. Exhibit 2 shows the DHCD's capital budget over time, including the proposed $352.7 million proposed for fiscal 2027. This is a bit lower than in fiscal 2026. That's due in part to the planned decrease for the rental housing programs compared to earlier highs. There's also a decrease in federal funds for the state small business credit initiative, as that program is, we're expected to receive the next tranche of funding in fiscal 2028, so there's nothing in fiscal 27. And then there's also a $4 million decrease for special loan programs, as those programs have a high unencumbered balance, and that gives the department time to spend that down. Turning next to the first issue in the analysis at the bottom of page 6, onto page 7 and 8. For the first time, DHCD in its fiscal 2027 proposed budget included proposed project awards across its state revitalization programs. Those programs include the Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative, or BRNI, the National Capital Program, or NED, the statewide component of the Strategic Demolition Fund, the SEED program, the Community Legacy Program, and the Business Facade Program. In recent years, the legislature has reserved funds under these programs for specified projects. You can see in Exhibit 3 on page 7, that last session, 50% of funds across the 5 programs shown were reserved by the legislature. DHCD awards the remaining funding through a combined competitive annual application round. Prioritization for these projects is now done for just communities. Those are disinvested neighborhoods identified by DHCD as required under chapters 147 and 148 of 2024. We've asked the department to comment on their process and criteria for awarding these funds. Turning next to the second issue, beginning on page 8, I'm going to talk about rental housing programs as well as the broader statewide need for housing. Exhibit 4 on page 8 shows the funding over time for DHCD's rental housing programs, which aim to create affordable housing for low to moderate income households. The fiscal 2027 funding totals $93.5 million. This is level with the amount planned in last year's CIP. In fiscal 2025, the department supported the creation or preservation of nearly 4,000 affordable housing units through this program. As I said, those programs support the housing for those at the lowest income levels, but I'd like to turn to talk about housing needs more broadly. In July 2025, DHCD published an updated statewide assessment of housing needs. Some takeaways from that report included that the estimated shortage of homes affordable to extremely low-income households has grown significantly since the 2020 report. But housing affordability challenges are not just limited to extremely low-income households, but are felt more broadly across the income spectrum. Also, there's a significant and growing shortage of senior housing, affordable to low-income seniors. This is a particular challenge noted by DHCD in the report. And lastly, housing production has not kept pace with demand. In January 2026, DHCD identified housing production targets by jurisdiction as required by a September 2025 executive order. Exhibit 5 on page 10 shows the statewide targets over the next 5 years, scaling up to a goal of 39,000 units in fiscal 2030. The last topic I want to talk about today is broadband, which starts on the bottom of page 10. Capital funding for broadband programs totaled $574 million in federal funds. That includes both funds from the American Rescue Plan Act as well as funds from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act for the BEAD program. Exhibit 6 on page 11 shows the ARPA component of that. So far, those funds are about 50% expended. There is $13 million originally allocated for public housing that's still unawarded at this time. And the Office of Statewide Broadband is working with the U.S. Treasury on alternative allowable uses for those funds. I've asked the department to comment on the plans to expend the remainder of the funds, particularly those funds that are still unallocated, in advance of the December 2026 expenditure deadline. On page 12 to 13, this discusses the BEAD program. Maryland's BEAD allocation totaled $267.7 million. Those funds were in DHCD's capital budgets in fiscal 24 and 25. The plan to spend those was just approved by the federal government in February 2026. It included preliminary awards of $79.1 million out of the original $267.7 million allocation. This reflects the results of the competitive funding round, which is expected to now serve all unserved locations across the state. The amount awarded was lower than expected due to some changes in the program, including criteria to prioritize the lowest cost projects regardless of technology. And also, it was lower due to locations having been served already through the ARPA programs. The remaining $189 million in funding is potentially available to be used for non-deployment activities, but we're still waiting on federal guidance in terms of how and when those can be used. Lastly, Exhibit 7 on page 13 shows the BEAD awards by jurisdiction. The DLS recommendations are to concur with the PAYGO allowance and to approve the general obligation bond authorizations. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Haskell, any questions from the subcommittee? Seeing none, we will call on our fearless secretary, Jake Day, and any panel that you might want to have with you. You may proceed, Mr. Secretary. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Ruff, Vice Chair Chang, esteemed members. So good to be with you today. For the record, my name is Jake Day. I have the honor of serving as Secretary of Housing and Community Development for our beloved state, and I appreciate the opportunity to discuss our fiscal year 27 capital budget. I have with me Assistant Secretary of Neighborhood Revitalization, Carol Gilbert, and Assistant Secretary of the Community Development Administration, Greg Hare. Our capital request reflects a disciplined strategic investment in Maryland's communities, focus on housing production, neighborhood revitalization, and economic competitiveness. As I've said before, Maryland's housing affordability crisis is driven by chronic underproduction. Our capital budget finances construction, it finances redevelopment, it finances revitalization projects that ultimately expand housing supply, that support our home ownership objectives, and that strengthen local economic development. DHCD remains one of the most effective agencies in leveraging state capital. In fiscal year 25, DHCD generated $8.5 billion in economic impact statewide, and every dollar in state funding leveraged $16 in direct investment. Our capital programs are structured to maximize return, utilizing general obligation bonds, revenue bonds, tax credits, and private investment to stretch every public dollar as far as possible. Whether through rental housing works, community legacy, Bernie, seed, or neighborhood business development, our capital strategy supports both housing supply and economic vitality. I want to take a second just to thank Ms. Haskell for the analysis and say that we concur with the DLS recommendations, of course, but I also want to briefly address the two topics where additional comment was requested in the analysis: the Department's State Revitalization Program funding process and the deployment of broadband ARPA funds by the end of the year. The Department has long used a rigorous multi-agency, competitively scored evaluation process for the State Revitalization Program applications. They're assessed on economic impact, community need, financial feasibility, project readiness, and long-term sustainability. For FY27, as part of the department's commitment to fiscal responsibility, we adjusted the timeline so that this evaluation could occur earlier, allowing us to provide project award recommendations at the beginning of the legislative session to better inform budgeting decisions by truly understanding demand, and also as a part of our department's commitment to moving our processes earlier and to making them shorter. Through these programs, we proposed $73.9 million in fiscal year 27 projects to support 185 projects across Maryland, including business expansion and retention, facade and streetscape improvements, mixed-use development, demolition, home rehabilitation incentives, and community facilities. By conducting the competitive review process at the beginning of the budgeting process, we're ensuring that funding decisions are grounded in measurable outcomes, such as job creation, private capital leverage, long-term revitalization impact before awards are made. And this approach ensures limited resources are directed toward projects that are fully vetted, ready to proceed, and positioned to deliver meaningful results. On the second issue, as an update on our deployment of ARPA broadband capital funds, we are on track to fully expend all funds ahead of the December 31st, 2026 deadline. The majority of the $157.1 million noted in the analysis as unexpended has already been awarded, all but $13 million, as you heard, and is supporting projects under active construction through our network infrastructure, difficult to serve premises, and public housing programs. Expenditures are accelerating as these projects move toward completion, and we actively monitor progress and work directly with subgrantees to resolve permitting, pole attachment, and other implementation issues to keep projects on schedule. Approximately $11.7 million remains available for redeployment. These funds will be obligated by late spring 2026 and invested through existing programs to expand middle mile infrastructure and extended to serve those difficult to serve locations. Based on current timelines, we expect substantial completion by fall 2026, and like I said, full expenditure of the ARPA funds by December 2026. And with that, we look forward to working with the legislature to ensure these investments deliver the greatest impact for communities across Maryland. I thank the committee and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And it's good to see you, Ms. Gilbert. Are there no questions from the subcommittee? Okay. Are there any other questions from the subcommittee? Delegate Grice.
All right, so much of your funding are competitive grants. Hold tight.
All right, very good. Thank you. Yeah, so most of your programs are grant funded. They're competitive grants. And so my question, I do have a question this time. So my question for you, you also have a lot of legislatively mandated funding as well for a lot of programs that exist, most of which are in 2 jurisdictions. Now, my question for you is off the top of your head, if you don't have the information, you can certainly be back with us. As a percentage of, all of the money that you have to work with, how much discretion do you guys actually have on the competitive grants?
So, Delegate, there are, I think discretion is probably described best in more than a simple number, only because there are programs that are geographically bound, like Baltimore Regional Neighborhoods Initiative or the Baltimore Vacancy Reinvestment Initiative, or the National Capital Economic Development Program, that have a geographic focus to them. And then all of our programs have the requirement to be, all of our grant neighborhood revitalization programs have the requirement to be spent in sustainable community jurisdictions or in sustainable community areas that are approved by the Sustainable Growth Subcabinet. And we have the additional scoring requirement for just communities and enough jurisdictions. But discretion still exists to create a scoring rubric that prioritizes readiness, impact, sustainability, and organizational capacity to implement. And so we have a sort of an objective scoring criteria that exists, and then a multi-agency review panel. We can provide you some more detail on that, but there are at least 9 core agencies that are always involved in that scoring, and then there are others that are invited to participate as well.
Right.
So I think we have a fair bit of discretion across all of our programs, with that caveat that there are some that are geographically.
Okay, because I know even with the Enough Act, there are certain neighborhoods that would never qualify, just because of the stringent requirements that's in that. So I am curious to see how much money's left over after, because obviously those have to be your priority projects, obviously, because they're mandated by law to fund. So I'm just curious about how much money is really left over for folks, who live in areas where they'll never qualify for, the only way they can is filling out those applications, those competitive grant applications, and then you guys take a look at it. So I just want to know how much money we're talking about.
I think it's worth noting that there are, the last couple of years, there's about $35 million across statewide strategic demolition, community legacy, SEED, and the Maryland Facade Improvement Program that is open to all jurisdictions. So that $35 million, represents about 40% of our state revitalization program dollars. And then Rental Housing Works, which is a very substantial program, $65 million in the governor's allowance this year. That's statewide as well. And then many of our other all of our other capital programs are statewide as well. So our home ownership, special loan programs, and shelter and transitional housing, and what am I forgetting?
Partnership.
And our partnership rental housing programs are all statewide as well.
Sorry, I said thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from the subcommittee? I guess I'll ask, I know you're clearly a numbers guy. Can you numerically kind of provide us the average increase in either assessed property value, small business openings, or housing production resulting from the state revitalization awards in the last couple of years? How you quantify that? Because I know you can obviously talk about how the impact it has made in a narrative, but by the numbers, is there a way to really quantify that?
So, Mr. Chair, there is a way to quantify that, and we can provide that. I don't have it off the top of my head. I apologize. But we can certainly provide. What we typically do is we measure a couple of the economic factors. That's jobs created. We measure both construction and permanent jobs per project, state and local tax revenue per project generated. That includes all sources, so sales, income, property, as estimated, of course, but we have that for each project. And then other induced economic impact. So we can provide that by project, by jurisdiction, and we could provide an average per project as well. And that's really how we measure, I'm giving you, when I give you like the $8.5 billion economic figure, that's the aggregate of all of the ways that we measure it. But in preparation for our annual economic impact report that we just published, we do, a by program and by project analysis. And I'd be happy to provide that for the committee.
And I would assume from your happiness to share that number is a positive number.
We feel pretty good about it.
Sincerely positive number, correct?
I mean, Mr. Chair, my sense is, and this is not meant to be a slight on any other state program, but if we're a state that's serious about economic growth, in the heart of our communities, there's not a better bang for your buck than the money we put into building housing and building economically important community projects, which includes commercial, mixed use, and also includes public facilities. We've invested in all kinds of projects, from town halls in small communities to major urban renewal projects in public spaces that are truly the public realm, but have a transformative impact in terms of revitalizing spaces that are forgotten about and that are underdeveloped or disinvested in. So I would say that the 16-to-1 leverage of private money is another reason why these are great programs. Again, for every dollar of public money, state money that we're putting in, they're generating $16 in private investment alongside of them. I think that's a smart investment of a state dollar.
Very good. Well, I think the leadership of the budget committees of our legislature are glad to hear that the process for these revitalization programs has been working in the recent past. So thank you so much for your testimony and for your service. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and we look forward to continuing to partner with you.
Indeed, same here. All right, seeing no questions from the subcommittee, we will get into 18 public witnesses. Mr. Secretary and your team, if you wouldn't mind hanging around for that testimony, we will get this off and started. Please remember to keep your comments to 2 minutes. And we will start with, I will call up, and as you come to the desk, if you could just go ahead with your testimony, Dennis Rasmussen, Claudia Wilson-Randall, Robert Myers, Casey Walker, and Kurt Summer. If you could, come on up, folks, please. Go right ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the subcommittee. For the record, my name is Ernie Grew, and I'm here today as a 40-year veteran of the mortgage banking industry and a past president of the Maryland Mortgage Bankers Association. And I'm here to express my support for the capital budget request made for the Department of Housing and Community Development.
I'm sorry, sir. What did you say your name was?
My name's Ernie Grew, G-R-U-E. Dennis
Are you testifying
Rasmussen.
on behalf of Mr. Rasmussen?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. As vested participants in the mortgage space, our association members, lenders, have witnessed firsthand the transformative effort and effect that the department's program, specifically the Maryland Mortgage Program, have on their clients. And these clients are especially first-time home buyers, low to moderate income families, and those that are underserved by the traditional mortgage products and programs that are available. The program itself provides critical down payment assistance and competitive interest rates at a time when the ability to afford a mortgage and properly sustain home ownership in our state is a significant challenge for any prospective home buyer. The program allows borrowers to achieve home ownership sooner and begin the process of building generational wealth, which contributes to stronger families, stronger neighborhoods, and stronger communities. Combining these programs with the expertise available through the Department of Housing and Community Development, along with the production and operational capabilities of over 100 active and approved lenders, results in a force multiplier that opens doors throughout the state that might otherwise remain closed. The Maryland Mortgage Program is a proven solution that exists today and provides crucial assistance that enables potential homeowners to live and work here in the state of Maryland. It is in full alignment with the department's mission to transform communities into places people want to call home. Its continued funding is vital. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson-Randall. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the Capital Budget Subcommittee. I'm happy to be here today. My name is Claudia Wilson-Randall. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Development Network of Maryland. CDN is an intermediary organization working to promote the impact and value of the community economic development organizations throughout the state. I'm here today in strong support of DHCD's capital budget and DHCD in general for their work benefits nearly all of CDN members in some way. We have members who benefit from the rental housing programs that provides a critical complement to the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program awards, as well as other vital, affordable single-family rental housing and home ownership. Bernie and NEB provide critical support for community centers and development throughout the state. But the most important thing that you should know about the projects funded by DHCD's capital budget is that they are vital to the people served at the organizations that I represent. I want to take a moment to address the practice of fencing off of funds within the neighborhood revitalization programs. When the awards were announced in December, more than 56% of the funds had been directed to specific projects outside the normal application project. This approach poses serious challenges to the integrity of the competitive application process. From an equity standpoint, fencing is particularly problematic. It sidelines the very communities that these programs are intended to support, those who have historically faced systemic disinvestment. When we bypass competitive process, we inadvertently favor well-connected entities over grassroots organizations. In the instructions for applying to the DHCD Neighborhood Revitalization Program, nowhere does it say, contact your elected official in the Maryland General Assembly to bypass all of the instructions in this form. In a time of federal attacks, limited state resources, and a hostile press coverage, the principles of fair play and accountability must be the floor and not the ceiling of funding decisions. My question to all of you is, what happens if this year 90% of funds are fenced off? Then what? Why raid the programs when the bond bill program already exists? What should I tell the organizations that spends 40 hours preparing an application and then asks, do I need to hire a lobbyist to get funded? I just want to close by saying that the citizens of Maryland rely on these programs for hope and economic growth, and I therefore ask for your strong support of the DHCD budget and their process. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson-Randall. I gave you a couple extra seconds there because I know how strong of an advocate you have been for all the stakeholders of the DHCD capital budget specifically. So thank you very much for your dedication and commitment. We hear you loud and clear. And so I will move on to Mr. Myers. Is that who's next?
Yep, Casey Walker.
Okay, go right ahead, Mr. Walker.
Sir, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the subcommittee. Good afternoon. My name is Casey Walker for the record. I am the CFO at Neighborhood Housing Service of Baltimore. And today I'll be joining with my colleague here, Rob. He'll go into much more details about our programs, but I'll begin with a high level view of why funding matters and what it makes possible. At NHS, we operate from a clear belief: social and economic justice are right for all people and communities. In Baltimore, that belief requires more than good intentions. It requires sustained investment in neighborhoods that have experienced long-term disinvestments. Our approach is rooted in partnership. We work with residents to remove barriers created by decisions historically made about communities rather than with them. That means aligning capital, strategy, community voice to produce measurable outcomes. Each year, approximately 250 families receive their keys to their first home through our home buying center. Through home preservations, we support roughly 75 families annually with critical repairs, replacing roofs, stabilizing foundations, installing furnaces, and ensuring homes are safe and accessible for seniors aging in place. In community development, we are delivering 20 newly rehabilitated homes this year, turning vacant properties into productive assets and reinvestment resources directly into the neighborhoods we serve. And for the fiscal 26, capital funding is essential to scale this work. BVRI provides critical gap financing that allows redevelopment to move forward at the block and neighborhood level. Bernie strengthens the work that we supported legacy residents through senior home repairs, empowering community-led spruce-up projects, and ensuring facade improvements so long-time homeowners see visible reinvestments along improvements. These are not isolated programs. Together, they form a comprehensive neighborhood redevelopment strategy. And on behalf of NHS and communities we serve, and I respectfully request a favorable report on the House bill. And thank you for your time there.
Thank you. Go right ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, Chairman Ruff, Vice Chair, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Robert Myers. I oversee the comprehensive community development at Neighborhood Housing Services of Baltimore. While our leadership has outlined our mission, the importance of the BVRI and Bernie, I just want to briefly share what this funding really enables in practice. It allows NHS to target our neighborhoods, or in our target neighborhoods, these capital programs allow us to move long vacant properties into active redevelopment. We currently deliver approximately 3 to 4 renovated homes per quarter, and as we are working to responsibly scale that capacity, we are onboarding additional development partners. BVRI funding is critical because it closes financing gaps and accelerates production. Without it, our projects simply stall. Bernie funding ensures that revitalization benefits legacy residents as well, supporting facade improvements, senior home repairs, roof and furnace replacements, and safety and accessibility upgrades on the same blocks where we're renovating homes. Importantly, this funding also sustains small and local businesses. Our redevelopment work supports Baltimore-based contractors, minority-owned firms, and neighborhood tradespeople. Each project creates jobs, generates revenue for local suppliers, and stabilizes workforce pipelines in communities that have historically lacked consistent investment. For every dollar invested by the state, we leverage significant additional capital back into these neighborhoods, multiplying the economic impact well beyond the original appropriation. These funds are not theoretical. They're deployed immediately into housing production, small business contracts, and neighborhood stabilization. Pulling back now will slow tangible process that is already underway, and I respectfully request a favorable vote.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon, Chairman Ruff and members of the committee. My name is Kurt Sommer. I'm Executive Director of the West Baltimore Renaissance Foundation. We are a 501c3 affiliated with LifeBridge Health. Our work focuses on the upstream factors addressing health, workforce development, youth mentoring, housing. We work in some of the most challenging neighborhoods in the state, in West Baltimore, where unemployment is high, housing vacancy, vacant lots are very high. Unemployment is high, the socioeconomic challenges are deep, and the portfolio that DHCD brings to the table positions it as one of the unique entities to make inroads into these challenges. What's valuable about the work that the agency brings is that they bring a thoughtful approach, a competitive process that evaluates both the strategic place and the conditions of proposed projects, as well as the capacity of the organizations to move these projects forward. The other piece that's related about their budget, and that's important, is that these factors that they're working to address also influence the health outcomes that my colleagues in clinical care address. The conditions of place impact diabetes, they impact high blood pressure, they impact mental health, behavioral health services. So the work that this agency takes on, it has multiple spin-off impacts. We heard about small business development impacts, we heard about economic development impacts, but it also has health impacts. So I appreciate your time today and the opportunity to express favorable support for their budget. Thank you.
Thank you each for your testimony. Questions from the subcommittee for this panel? Seeing none, thank you all so much for your testimony. We'll call up the next panel. Starting with Chrissy Erb, China Diaz, Meredith Chaikin, Layla Kohler-Fruet, and William Moore. You can go right ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. Chair Ruff, Vice Chair Chang, Delegate Metzger, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm Chrissy Erb, the Executive Director of the Essex Community Development Corporation in the 6th Legislative District. I respectfully urge your support for DHCD's capital budget and the $900,000 allocation for the Essex Shared Commercial Kitchen through the Neighborhood Revitalization Program. Essex is one of Baltimore County's largest communities, a proud working waterfront with deep roots in small locally owned businesses, but it's also a place that for many residents feels it has been left behind. Today, Essex has become a beautiful melting pot of cultures, cuisines, and entrepreneurial energy, and we are on the cusp of a tipping point, the transformation back into a vibrant Main Street corridor along Eastern Boulevard. This shared commercial kitchen project is being led in partnership with a local business owner who immigrated from Ecuador and chose to build his future in our community. He has created multiple successful food businesses in Essex that are embraced by residents and visitors alike, bringing renewed pride to the community. His journey, investing locally and creating opportunity for others, is a powerful expression of the American dream. Through this kitchen, he is helping open doors for the next generation of Essex entrepreneurs. The shared commercial kitchen provides the missing infrastructure Essex needs, affordable licensed production space paired with workforce and business training through CCBC and our Baltimore County partners. It converts existing talent and demand into viable small businesses, jobs, and ultimately storefronts on Eastern Boulevard. This project is already underway, and the FY 2027 capital funding is a critical next step for build-out, equipment, and completion. With it, this facility becomes a catalyst for transformational redevelopment across Eastern Baltimore County. We respectfully ask your support to help Essex reach this tipping point and ensure that the state's investment delivers lasting economic opportunity for our community.
Thank you, Ms. Erb. Spent a little time in Essex as a county prosecutor on Kelso Drive, so.
Awesome.
Much appreciation to you for your advocacy. Thank you. Go right ahead.
Chair Ruff and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Shina Diaz, and I am the Director of Home Preservation at Habitat for Humanity Metro Maryland. We respectfully urge for your support for DHCD's FY27 capital budget. For over 44 years, Habitat has built and preserved affordable home ownership opportunities for low and moderate income households. Through our home preservation program, we help older adults, working families, and longtime residents remain safely in their homes by addressing critical repairs, accessibility modifications, and climate resiliency improvements. To date, we've invested over $12 million in home preservation across Prince George's and Montgomery counties. But behind this number are real families. A story that comes to mind is a mother who was a single mother who had two children who had disabilities, and in the middle of the winter, their HVAC unit, their heating unit, stopped working. Unfortunately, she didn't have the funds to replace the unit, and so Habitat went to her home. And it was through the capital support that we've gotten through these programs that we were able to replace the HVAC unit and restore safe heat for the family. This is the direct impact of capital funding. So we are proud to be a selected awardee for NED funds. It's through the capital funds that we can complete substantial repairs, including roof replacements, HVAC upgrades, and electrical corrections to preserve safe and stable home ownership. Capital funding strengthens Maryland's housing infrastructure. It preserves affordability, prevents displacement, and protects the health and safety of residents. And the need continues to grow. We've received over 4,500 inquiries from homeowners seeking major repairs. We respectfully ask that you maintain full funding for DHCD's capital budget, including net awards, so we can continue protecting Maryland homeowners and strengthening the communities they call home. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. You may go right ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Ruff, members of the committee. My name is Meredith Chaikin. I'm the CEO of the Greater Baybrook Alliance, which is a community development corporation in Brooklyn and Curtis Bay in South Baltimore and Brooklyn Park in Northern Anne Arundel County. And we strongly support DHCD's capital budget. I submitted written testimony, so I was hoping to talk about just one specific project that we were funded, but actually that sort of undermines the entire approach for DHCD and Bernie, which is that there's a holistic approach to neighborhood revitalization. So I'm going to highlight just a couple of our awards that are in the FY27 budget. One is our Baybrook Renewal Opportunity Program, which supports the acquisition and rehab of residential properties that are in areas of concentrated violence, which is one of our neighborhood's priorities. We also have a home buyer assistance program, which provides $10,000 to $15,000 incentives to lower the barriers for home ownership for our residents. The Brooklyn Legacy Home Repair Program, we work in partnership with Healthy Neighborhoods, Inc., which does home improvements for seniors so that they can stay in their homes. They can benefit from increased investment, especially in safety from our perspective, and offset the risk of gentrification. And then creative placemaking, which allows us to work in the public realm to make improvements for the whole block, so that we're using a whole block strategy and that the residents of the entire neighborhood are lifted up in our revitalization efforts. So this program creates wealth, it stabilizes the neighborhood, and invites a tremendous amount of private investment into our neighborhoods. And we could not do this without DHCD's capital budget and our support through Bernie. Thank you.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon, Chairman Ruff and members of the House Capital Budget Subcommittee. My name is Layla Kohler-Frew, and I'm the Vice President of Homeowner Services and Community Relations at Habitat Chesapeake. We are a leading provider of affordable home ownership opportunities in Central Maryland. Our program is, in terms of its main features, includes zero-interest mortgages and initial mortgage payments that are no more than 30% of the household income. This is what creates affordability. Our home building requires capital funds, and we applaud the work that DHCD is doing to support these efforts across the state. In the proposed FY27 budget, there is an allocation specific to us within SEED that is actually, we're a sub-recipient to Johns Hopkins, and it's for some of our work in Penn Lucie. There's also an allocation for new homes that we're building in Severn, which is currently in pre-development. We are grateful for the opportunity to be able to serve with homeownership affordability in Anne Arundel County and Penn Lucie, as well as the other neighborhoods in which we work. One of the main pieces that we'll be delivering in each of these cases is serious energy efficiency in all of these homes, which is another piece to the affordability. As you may know, we don't just build homes, we partner with future home buyers, and we have a robust program for introducing them to the practicalities of homeownership. It's with DHCD's efforts and funding resources via Uplift, Bernie, BVRI, CDBG, Community Legacy, and SEED that we're able to achieve much of that. It's critical for our work. So we're grateful for the support of these state funding resources in the past and present. I wanted to note that in my daily work, I spend time with both home buyers in the program and with community stakeholders and neighborhoods where we build. I have the advantage of seeing the on-the-ground work that any community at any time is doing to improve its surroundings and to celebrate. And that's what we work for. It's, in our case, for providing homeownership, but also transformation and contributing to greater community health. I would respectfully ask that you support this current budget.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Willie Moore. I'm president of Southway Builders, a general contractor based out of Baltimore City. We've been doing affordable housing, building affordable housing since we opened our doors in 1991. I'm here as a member of the board of Maryland Affordable Housing Coalition with a specific appeal that relates to rental housing works. 2 years ago, the rental housing works budget was $110 million. Last year, due to the budget woes, it went down to $85 million, and this year it went down again to, the proposed is $65 million. I think through the comptroller's financial report, through the governor, through all of you as knowledgeable business folks know that the best solution for us as a state is to grow our economy, and the fastest path to that growth is through affordable housing. We are looking to reduce the budget that gets at these housing projects done. And I think the projections for the state that are represented yearly is right now there is a shortage of 100,000 affordable housing units in the state, a shortage of 100,000. Last year we produced 4,000. If we go at our current pace, we will solve the current problem in 25 years. That's no solution. This is obviously a clearly very difficult situation. costs of construction since pre-COVID have gone up over 40%. I was a little bit excited a couple, maybe last week or week before when the Supreme Court had its ruling about tariffs. I thought, there's finally something that's going to lower costs. And in fact, I just learned today that the tariffs on steel, aluminum, and copper actually are not part of the IEEPA program that the Supreme Court ruled on, and so their 20 to 50% tariffs remain in place.
Mr. Moore, can you wrap up your testimony for us?
Yes. So just, I appreciate the hard work that you all are doing in the difficult situation that you're in, and I please ask for at least level funding on rental housing works or more if you can do it. So thank you.
Very good, and it sounds like you're going to be supporting my bill, House Bill 1279, to up the catalytic revitalization tax credits. So I'll look forward to your favorable testimony on that. Any questions from the subcommittee on this panel? Well, thank you all very much for your testimony. We'll call up our next panel. We are getting there, folks, starting with Ashley Wallace, Eugene Frazier, Milana Vayner, and Stephanie Proesto? All right. Thank you so much. I'll leave the last for the last one. You can go right ahead, Ms. Wallace.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Chairman. Nice to see you, Delegate Smith. I'm Ashley Wallace. I'm the Executive Director of the Central Baltimore Partnership, an almost 20-year-old community development organization working in Baltimore City, serving 11 neighborhoods and over 25,000 residents. I would like to thank you for this time and for the DHCD Secretary Day's tremendous leadership in community development and revitalizing our historic and new communities across the state. I would like to strongly urge you to support the continued capital funding for these immense programs that serve so many communities and serve so many people, especially at a time when our families and housing markets are so precarious and unstable. It's very important that we continue to invest in the resilience of our families and of our residents and of our communities. CBP works with over 150 partners to do the work that we do, and we leverage state capital at 13-to-1, not quite the 16-to-1 statewide program, but we all can have goals. 13-to-1 in private and philanthropic investment, and we do it very thoughtfully and strategically. And so we strongly also support the multi-year proposal of awards and projects. Organizations like ours are extremely taxed in resources and operating support and staff. And given that this work can be often long and slow and very hard and difficult, multi-year funding is something that we've strongly advocated for a long time, and allows us to take the time to think strategically and focus on our priorities over a period of many, many years. So we're very supportive of this new approach and hope that you will be as well. And I just wanted to share one example of a priority project that we're focused on right now that couldn't be made possible without DHC support. We were able to acquire a very long vacant bank building at the very epicenter of Baltimore City at North and Charles Streets. And it was one of the most challenging receivership cases the receiver that I worked with had ever worked on in his 30 years doing this. It was a long-time land speculator. And now that we have control, we can use DHCD funding to activate it into a new entrepreneurial and small business hub. So thank you for your time. I see the red light.
Very cool. I love to hear it. Love to hear that. Thank you very much. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Ruff, honorable members of the Capital Budget Subcommittee. My name is Milana Vayner, and I'm the Chief of Policy at Baltimore County DHCD and also a member of the Maryland Affordable Housing Coalition as the local government representative. I'm here today to implore you, despite the many competing budget priorities, to increase by $20 million the rental housing programs budget to get it back to fiscal 26 funding. The costs for projects to pencil haven't improved, yet the need for a variety of homes across all income level bands remains, and the creation of housing is integral to economic growth and community vitality. Investing in housing affordability is an economic decision as much as it is a values decision. The county recently released our first ever housing needs assessment. There is a current shortage of 19,000 units for families earning 30% AMI and below. As a consequence of the shortage, 55% of all county renter households are cost-burdened and 29% are severely cost-burdened. 24% of all homeowner households, 52,000 households, are also cost-burdened. How can families ever save enough to buy a home when they can barely afford rent? There are over 50 LIHTC projects in service in the county, totaling over 4,700 units. Some of these projects received state DHCD grants and loans, including rental housing, community legacy, and strategic demo funds, making them feasible in the short and long term. In December, we closed on 2 more, 131 units, and this year we plan to close on 5 more, creating or preserving over 500 units. These projects cannot happen without these capital funds. The state's funds also allow us to leverage our limited local housing funds for non-LIHTC affordable projects. We cannot build the future we all wish for our residents without this funding. During a continuing housing affordability crisis, these funds are critical to moving production forward instead of leaving the most vulnerable of families behind. Thank you.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Prestel, and I'm the Executive Director for Housing Initiative Partnership. Housing is HIP. That's how you can remember us. And we're a nonprofit affordable housing developer and counseling agency based in Prince George's and Montgomery counties. Over our 36-year history, we've served over 40,000 clients. We've developed over 600 units of affordable rental housing and over 100 units of home ownership for first-time home buyers. And I'm here to strongly support the capital budget for Maryland DHCD with the hope that you can think about expanding funding on the rental housing side with Rental Housing Works. There are 2 programs I'd like to highlight. One is the National Capital Economic Development Program, which is really flexible revitalization funds. And we as nonprofits are the first responders in our communities, and we are trying to find innovative ways to help bring revitalization. And these funds are critical to our organization. We have used them in a lot of different ways. Just on Friday, we had a great ribbon cutting in Fairmont Heights where we used NED funds to help with 6 new modular net zero homes for first-time home buyers, and we created a pocket park that celebrated Fairmont Heights African American history. And we could not have done that without those resources. We currently have funding in the capital budget pre-approved to help us do more work with affordable home ownership. So we really encourage you to support those programs. And then secondly, on the rental housing side, as you have heard from many speakers before, there is such a critical need for affordable rental housing. We were selected as one of the community schools rental assistance program administrators, and there's nothing like having to answer the phone. Our families are in crisis and they need more affordable housing, and production is the way to lead the way forward, and those additional dollars for rental housing are really critical. So we urge you to think about that, and then we recognize how difficult a budget it is this year. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I just want to make sure that Eugene Frazier is not here. All right. Any questions from the subcommittee for this panel? Well, thank you all so much for your testimony. And we will go to our final panel, but before we do that, just as a point of personal privilege, I do see Pastor Michael Gaines in the audience today. He is the president of Bridges CDC in the 41st District, the mighty 41st, and in Park Heights. And I don't see his name on the list to testify. But Pastor Gaines, I do have an opening if you would like to fill Mr. Frazier's spot.
Yes, sir.
All right, so Pastor Gaines, you can come on up. And then the last witnesses I have are Dana Johnson, going once, going twice, Miranda Willems, Patrick Stewart, and Eric Benzer. Ma'am, what's your name on the end?
Oh, hi, I'm Stephanie Archer-Smith. I'm testifying for Eric Benzer.
Why don't you come on over to this side, sit on the other side of Pastor Gaines so we can see you. And Mr. Stewart, why don't you, oh, Patrick Stewart, what's going on, my man? Go right ahead, we'll start with you.
Good afternoon, Chair Ruff, Vice Chair Chang, members of the committee. My name is Patrick Stewart, Regional Vice President with Penrose. We are an affordable housing developer. I am also a member of the Maryland Affordable Housing Coalition Board of Directors. Appreciate the opportunity. I'm here to speak in support of DHCD's capital budget requests, including, importantly, an increase of funding for rental housing works back up to the $85 million level funding of rental housing programs and DHCD's other funding programs. Focusing first on RHW, Rental Housing Works. Since its inception 14 years ago, the Rental Housing Works program has become an instrumental gap financing tool, stimulating investment in quality affordable housing for working families, seniors, individuals with disabilities, and people experiencing homelessness, while acting as a catalyst for job creation in Maryland. During that time, RHW has created or preserved nearly 20,000 units of affordable housing through 181 distinct projects in 21 jurisdictions around the state, providing over $450 million in critical subordinate loan financing to support over $5.1 billion in total development costs. That's a leverage ratio of 11-to-1, meaning every $1 of Rental Housing Works funds leverages over $11 of non-state resources, including private investment, and all of that supporting nearly 40,000 jobs. In DHCD's current pipeline, there's another over 9,000 units, $240 million of Rental Housing Works needs, which will leverage over $3.2 billion in total investments and 30,000 jobs. In terms of Penrose direct experience using these critical programs, as just a small example of how organizations like ours, both for-profit and nonprofit, are putting these dollars to use around the state of Maryland, we've used RHW to produce or preserve over 750 units of housing in 7 different legislative districts. These examples include comprehensive public housing revitalizations on the Eastern Shore, Anne Arundel County, and Baltimore, complete transformations of distressed areas of Prince George's County and West Baltimore, where affordable housing is being built alongside market rate for sale homes, and one of the first new construction housing developments in Park Heights in decades, none of which would have been possible without DHCD's RHW, RHP, and other programs. Beyond merely plugging a financing gap, the existing of these programs and continued funding of them is critically important to provide predictability and certainty for housing developers, since it typically takes at least 3 years, often more, to complete an affordable housing project from inception. Without these funds, many of these projects won't even get out of the starting gate, let alone reaching the finish line. They're needed to help leverage local funding, and they're needed to avoid the delays caused by a lack of availability of funds, so we can keep projects on track, get more shovels in the ground, and get more families moved into affordable homes.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Can you wrap up your testimony?
Yes, sir. To wrap up, we urge you to support DHCD's capital budget, importantly increasing RHW back up to $85 million, maintaining level funding for RHP and other programs. Deeply appreciate your consideration and time. Thanks.
Yeah, we deeply appreciate the new housing in Park Heights, also in the Uplands, and all the work that you've done in the 41st and West Baltimore. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
You can go right ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Ruff, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Miranda Darden-Willems, and I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland Affordable Housing Coalition, representing 185 member organizations that use DHCD financing to build, own, and manage affordable rental housing communities across Maryland. I'm going to be very brief. You know the statistics, you know we have a housing crisis, you've heard we need to build 130,000 more housing units just for serving low-income residents in our state. The governor says more housing is a priority. The comptroller has warned that we need more housing to keep people from moving out of the state and boost our economy. The legislature says more housing is a priority, but we cannot build more affordable housing without more resources from the state. Rental Housing Works budget has been reduced for the last 2 years, as you've heard earlier today. The only way more affordable housing units will get built is with multiple layers of financing. That includes federal tax credits, private funds, state and local funds. These state funds are especially important because they fill the funding gaps not covered by private loans. A $20 million cut to Rental Housing Works means 6 projects are going to have to wait another year to get funded. And there are 75 of these projects lined up right now waiting for funding. We know funds are scarce. We know there are many important priorities that all need more funding, but this program is a solid investment of state dollars. Funding the DHCD rental housing program's budget at last year's funding level of $85 million or more would allow us to continue our important work of building more affordable rental housing units to help solve the current housing crisis and to improve Maryland's economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Gaines.
Good afternoon, Chair Ruff, Vice Chair Chang. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, especially since I failed to register, but I appreciate the opportunity.
Don't keep bringing it up.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. You've heard a lot of why we need to maintain the DHCD capital budget in place and approve it. And I'll tell you 4 reasons why Bridges CDC exists. We're currently building an 83-unit affordable rental housing project in Park Heights. Never would have been done without the support of DHCD. We're renovating vacant homes, and to give you an idea of the impact of vacancy in our community, in a 5-block radius around our church, there are 90 vacant homes. It is our intent to renovate or encourage renovation of all of those units to rebuild this community. Every Monday and Tuesday, we have a food pantry where there are, on a weekly basis, 250 families that are fed. And so we're building a community life center where we will continue to feed people, but not only feed people, but encourage job development. It is a holistic approach to revitalizing the community and the souls of individuals. We strongly encourage you to approve the DHCD capital budget. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Gaines, especially for your work on the residents at Belvedere, which we're all looking forward to being a centerpiece of inviting people into the Park Heights community, especially around Preakness. So thank you once again, and you can proceed. Go ahead, Ryan. Go right ahead.
Good evening, Chair Ruff and members of the committee. My name is Stephanie Archer-Smith. I am testifying in place of Eric Benzer, and I serve as the Executive Director and CEO of Meals on Wheels of Central Maryland. I thank you for this opportunity to testify in support of DHCD's budget and for your leadership and continued commitment to capital investments that strengthen Maryland's communities. Meals on Wheels of Central Maryland delivers more than 5,000 meals each day, over 1 million meals annually, to older adults and individuals with disabilities throughout Central Maryland. These meals, coupled with an array of support services, including home repairs and safety modifications, ensure that older Marylanders can remain safe and independent at home. This reduces more costly institutional care and saves precious healthcare dollars while also supporting community stability. Our new building project included in this budget is both essential infrastructure and community redevelopment. As Maryland's aging population continues to grow, the demand for our services is rapidly increasing. After 35 years at our current facility, we must relocate to prepare for the future. This project, the first in Meals on Wheels' 65-year history, will expand production capability, improve operational efficiency, and ensure scalable service delivery for decades to come. Our new facility will also be constructed on a parcel that has remained vacant for decades, directly adjacent to the Edmondson Village Shopping Center. It represents the productive reuse of underutilized land and as a permanent anchor institution within this important commercial corridor. Each day, more than 150 employees, volunteers, and partners will operate from this location, directly supporting small businesses and strengthening the long-term viability of the shopping center. The project is shovel-ready and supported by strong organizational leadership and a public-private funding strategy. State participation will leverage additional private investment, accelerate redevelopment of a long vacant site, and strengthen the economic vitality of Edmondson Village. We respectfully request your support of DHCD's capital budget and this important investment in Maryland's communities. Thank you for your consideration.
Well, it seems like this panel was a feature of the 41st. So I'm very proud of all the work that you guys have been doing. Thank you so much for your testimony. Questions from the subcommittee? Delegate McCaskill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, I apologize. I didn't see your name on a witness list. Could you, I'm just kidding. I just had to put it out there again. I apologize. Thank you all for all that you do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Where's the mute button up here? No.
As a preacher, I could have taken longer, but.
Right. Well, you get a pass because you're from 21215. So, Delegate Metzger.
Thank you. One preacher to the next. Pastor, I love the project that you've got, especially with the 90 homes around the church.
Yes, sir.
And what I'm excited about is I've got a bill that would put people behind the walls to learn the internship program and become a carpenter, an electrician, and so forth. That way they've got more skin in the game. So I just wanted to applaud you for that, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, delegates. Thank you, delegates. And the chair is the only one that gets to preview their bills. Other than that, are there any other questions for this panel? If not, I just want to thank everyone who has taken the time and patience to bear with us through this entire budget hearings. These budget hearings, they're very important, especially this last budget. Obviously, a lot of public interest in how we handle the capital dollars through this process. So please continue to stay invested, and we very much appreciate your advocacy. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for sticking around. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.